1, English. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, test. Test. 1, 2, 3. Test. Channel 1. Now I will move to the channel 2.
More. Which do you believe is the most important? To produce enough nutritious, affordable food for every person, or protect the future of our planet? We don't believe we should have to choose. As the European Green Deal sets out to make Europe the world's first climate-neutral continent, farm to fork is at its heart. Investing billions of euros into research and technologies, transforming how we produce, distribute and consume our food for healthy people, healthy societies and a healthy planet, and at the same time creating new opportunities for consumers, farmers and the food industry. It's time to reshape tomorrow, to move from an ideal to a reality, from a way of eating to a way of life, from farm to fork. Do you have the appetite for change?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us today for this wonderful session and wonderful discussion we've got lined up for you. My name is Abdul Karim Hanif, a broadcast journalist based here in the United Arab Emirates, and we're hoping to bring an insightful discussion and moderate these discussions. You'll also be joined by my colleague, Miss Mariam Faraj.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Dubai and welcome to Expo. It's such a pleasure to be co-moderating and co-hosting this afternoon a very important topic with the thematic week of food and agriculture and responsibility and sustainability towards a healthier and nutritious future for our kids. As a mother of two, this is such a very important topic because we all want our kids and ourselves to be growing up healthy, natural, nutritious, and have further sustainability for our future. So thank you very much. I will be moderating the second and the third panel with amazing and very inspiring case studies from around the world to talk about how can you actually reach fork or farm to fork successful projects and pilots. So thank you, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mariam, and we look forward to these sessions later on today. Just as a bit of a reminder, and good afternoon to all of you joining us live virtually as well. We've got the translation headsets, and most of the discussions are expected to take place in English, but should you wish to understand it a bit further, whether it's in French as well or in English, we've got the translation headsets, and the ladies on either side of the rooms will be happy to assist you with the translation headset. So let's move on with our first discussion as we look forward to understanding the farm to fork strategy, which is part of the European Green Deal to transform EU into a modern, resource efficient and competitive economy. We're also looking at how the farm to fork strategy, which is part of that Green Deal, is there to make food systems fair, healthy and environmentally friendly. To enable and accelerate this transition to a fair, healthy and environmentally friendly food system, advisory services are important, so are the financial instruments, but also one of the core discussions that I'll be moderating today is the research and innovation. So to set the tone for the conference today, let's welcome our first speaker, His Excellency Xavier Châtel, who's the Ambassador of France to the United Arab Emirates. Please put your hands together to welcome him on stage. Thank you. Right.
So, this being the French pavilion, the French ambassador, the French presidency of the Council of the European Union, I will have to speak in French. So my friends, take the headsets, otherwise my career choice is somewhere between being quartered and being impaled, and I hope it's not what you wish to me, so I will speak in French. Et si vous avez mis vos casques.
So if you already have your headsets, the Minister Julian asked me to read some words of welcome to you. So consider that as if it was him who's addressing you and not me, the ambassador. Your Excellency, the Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, ministers and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your invitation and for this exchange, which is interested in the future of our food system and the danger that's looming. As you know, such transitions are registered within the European Green Deal, especially transition towards agriculture with the strategy from farm to fork. However, there are some imperatives we think about here about reconciling economic development and environment protection. The both cannot be disassociated if we cannot have the necessary compensation. I'm thinking here about the agricultural development policies, which means guaranteeing food security and healthy and sufficient food and also sustainable food. We need to make sure that there is excellent cohesion of our policies and also mutual policies within our countries. But before we can move at the international level. And these policies are supported by France and also the International Coalition of Agroecology that was hosted by United Nations for food system and initiative for the future for food security. So as you can see, the challenges that our policies are facing can sometimes face each other and get in contradiction, and we need to face those challenges, and we need to have access to innovation. As engineer of agriculture, and here it's the minister who's talking to you, not myself, so science and reason should guide our action. It can allow us to find solutions to achieve such transition. Within this perspective, we can be successful in transition, especially what we call as the third agricultural evolution. It's the evolution of knowledge in the service of our sovereignty. France deploys 2.9 million euro for solutions of robots, digital solution for biocontrol and making it accessible to our farmers. It will allow us to reconcile capacity of production and environment protection and adaptation to climate change. As an example, to select different series of protection and also to reduce the use of sanitary products for agriculture. Innovation, we need to apply it ourselves with the decision makers in the public policies that we use, and also we need to use modern technologies that are based on nature, such as agroecology, agriculture based on carbon. The techniques that we deploy, such as the plantation and sustainable management and development of vegetables plantation, are real pillars to reduce CO emissions and greenhouse gases, and it will allow us to be the real soldiers of climate. And we need to encourage such themes. Mr. the Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, innovation is within the DNA of our systems, and it's up to us to mobilize it in the service of this transition and for environment. So I wish you all to have a successful exchange, and the Minister will follow up on the conclusions of your exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador of France to the UAE. Our next speaker to discuss the challenges and opportunities of a global transition to a sustainable food system or systems is going to be Her Excellency Stella Kyriakidis. Okay. Oh, it's a video? Okay, let's get the video presentation up.
Janusz, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be opening today's important conference, and I thank our colleagues from the French Pavilion for hosting it. I also thank the Dubai Expo organizers for their determination in making this event happen, despite the delays that the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed. Determination is exactly what we need to take us through the pandemic and beyond, to a better world of opportunity, mobility, and of sustainability, the three sub-themes of this Expo. Today, my focus is on sustainability and how food systems contribute to it. When it comes to food, the European Union has risen to various challenges over the years. We now have safe food through the General Food Law, affordable food thanks to the internal market, and food security with the help of the common agricultural and fisheries policies. Yet in the EU, 33 million people cannot afford a quality meal every day. We waste 20% of the food we produce. More than half of the population is overweight, and obesity is a growing health problem. These alarming trends are not unique to the EU, but pose challenges worldwide. Our entire planet is under pressure, with food systems accounting for over 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Clearly, we need to respond with swift and effective action from all sectors. The Farm to Fork strategy is the EU's blueprint for our transition towards a fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly sustainable food system. It is an integral part of our Green Deal, seeking to keep Europe's food system within planetary boundaries and to achieve that it encourages innovation to help Europe pioneer a food system that is beneficial to biodiversity, to climate, and to health. And it is comprehensive, addressing the entire food system at all levels, with 27 major initiatives. The EU Code of Conduct on Responsible Food Businesses and Marketing Practices is one such initiative already underway. Stemming from industry and promoted by the Commission, it now has over 100 signatories. It sets out ambitious commitments and actions to improve sustainability and complement our legislative initiatives. We will continue to promote the Farm to Fork strategy internationally, seeking green partnerships with like-minded countries. These partnerships have already led to the inclusion of a sustainable food system chapter in the new free trade agreements we sign. And in addition, last year's UN Food Systems Summit has resulted in a series of coalitions on topics such as healthy diets from sustainable food systems and food waste. I invite all of you to engage in these coalitions. Ladies and gentlemen, we must make concerted efforts to deliver a sustainable, fair, and resilient food system that, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, produces safe, healthy, nutritious, and affordable food for a growing global population and helps restore vital ecosystems. The Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy are the EU's contribution to these efforts. The theme of this Expo is Connecting Minds, Creating the Future. We know that when we connect our minds, a brighter future for our planet and future generations is within reach. And now, we must create it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it was a very, very insightful and a very emotional speech as well. So up next, we've got a keynote speech by His Excellency Janusz Wojciechowski, who's the European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is my pleasure to be here to participate in this very interesting conference during the excellent Expo exhibition in Dubai and in the French pavilion at the time of the French presidency. Congratulations for excellent exhibitions. I had opportunity to visit. Congratulations to Mr. Ambassador, to Mr. Commissioner General of this exhibition. Thank you also for Mr. Ambassador of the European Union for your organizing of my visit in this excellent events in Expo Dubai. I'd like also to thank my colleague Stella Kyriakides for her warm words, and we share our responsibility about the Farm to Fork strategy in the European Union. Her responsibility is general, my responsibility is mainly about the agricultural contribution into the Farm to Fork strategy. Her responsibility is more than food safety, for food security. And but this strategy is very important for the future of the European agriculture, and thank you very much for your interest and organizing of this conference. As you know, we are in the middle of the week dedicated to agriculture and livelihoods. To me, this is a very fitting title. It reminds us that agriculture supports our livelihoods, not only our farmers and their families, but every one of us across society. Our everyday lives rest on a secure supply and safe and nutritious food. Our food and farming is more than just a sector of the economy. It is a way of life. If we want to continue this way of life, then we cannot continue with business as usual. The United Nations Food Systems Summit has made it very clear that we need bold actions to transform the ways we produce, process, and consume food across the world. In the European Union, we have developed a clear roadmap with the Farm to Fork strategy, which is at the heart of our European Green Deal. From the beginning, let me say that the Farm to Fork strategy is a strategy of cooperation. The European Union stands ready to cooperate with all countries who want to work towards sustainable food systems. Together, we must work for global food systems that are environmentally sustainable, that have a neutral or positive climate impact, that work with natural resources, not against them, and reverse the loss of biodiversity. We must work for systems that are socially sustainable, that ensure food security and public health, making sure that everyone has access to sufficient levels of nutrition. And finally, we must work for food systems that are economically sustainable, that preserve the affordability of food and also generate rewarding incomes for farmers, foster competitiveness, and promote fair trade. To achieve these goals, research and innovation will be crucial. That is why I am extremely happy that you will discuss today how we can use research and innovation to create modern and sustainable food systems together through Green Alliance and research initiatives in the highest level, as well as innovative projects and nature-based solutions that we can put in place on the ground. With this in mind, I thank you for your attention. With this in mind, I thank you for your attention. I regret that I cannot stay with you during the conference, but I'm expected in other places here in the Expo. However, I will come back to join you again at the end of, and in order to officially close the conference. In the meantime, my colleagues will stay with you in order to present the European point of view on the challenging topics which require our initiative and attention. I wish you an interesting and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We've got some questions for you. We can't let you go this easily today. We've got a question because we're trying to understand the global level. We're here at the Expo. And why is it important to act at a global level to fulfill the international commitments and also ensure food that is sufficient, healthy, and also produced sustainably?
Yes, thank you for this question. The transition towards sustainable food system is a worldwide issue. In the European Union, we recognize that we cannot act alone. For this reason, we are delivering on a series of actions to support a global move towards sustainable food systems. I can say a few words about the very important international partnership approach to support developing countries in their transition to sustainable food systems, building green alliances with third countries, and promoting sustainable food systems in international standard-setting bodies and other multilateral organizations, ensuring the inclusion of ambitious provisions related to sustainable food in all relevant bilateral agreements. In addition, we promote the sustainability of food imported into the EU through appropriate labeling schemes, and where needed by proposing regulatory and non-regulatory measures. I would also highlight the UN Food System Summit preparatory process, which has led to emergence of more than 30 coalitions and initiatives for action. This is the
Okay. The other aspect is the research and innovation, leading us to the next panel. What are the R&I needs to address the challenges and seize these opportunities of sustainable food systems, and how does the EU support this effort?
Yes, that's research and innovation is very important to achieve our goals in Green Deal, Farm to Fork strategy, and to make our agriculture more friendly for environment, for climate, for animal welfare, at the same time to make our agricultural policy more friendly for farmers. I can say that in European Union, what we are doing, our framework program for research and innovation, formerly Horizon 2020 and now Horizon Europe, works in synergy with the Common Agricultural Policy under the umbrella of the European Innovation Partnership. Today we already have many Horizon 2020 and EIP Agri projects that deliver a wealth of new technology, new knowledge and innovative solutions. For example, the Sapphire project involving researchers across Europe has developed 6 novel vaccines against major livestock pathogens. Under Horizon Europe, we will invest around 9 billion euro to support the Green Deal priorities in agriculture, food and the bioeconomy. In the Horizon Europe work program 2021-2022, we have dedicated 1.9 billion euro to generate the best scientific inquiries and innovative ideas for sustainable farming, food systems and bioeconomy. I'd like to add maybe thing which is very important also because the very important priority of the French presidency in agriculture, which is the carbon farming. Carbon farming, which is very important concept of the innovation in our agriculture to support farmers who voluntarily introduce good farming practices into their farms, practices like practices which are introducing the carbon sequestration, carbon restoration at soil. They are like to use the natural manure, to leave the harvest residues at soil, and extensive summer grazing is one of them. Precision farming, the best use, the more precise use of fertilizers, pesticides. This is very important, and we need research and innovation support to introduce the new practices, new technologies. This is very important, research support for the carbon farming practices. That this is very good, and I'd like to thank again for the French presidency, because this priority is also the European Commission priority. We we published a communication on the carbon farming a few weeks ago, and now we continue our work together with the French presidency, because the carbon farming, this complex of good practices for environment, for climate, for animal welfare, this is the future of our agriculture. And we need research and innovation to develop our agriculture in this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development. We look forward to seeing you back again on stage towards the end of the session. Well, we're now moving towards our first session today, the first panel discussion looking at research and innovation, and this is going to be a very, very fruitful discussion that we look forward to as part of the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. Now, we all agree that business as usual is not an option. To address these challenges and seize the opportunities, all the food system actors, farmers, who are the backbone, but also the industry, distribution, consumers, and even public authorities need to change their practices. We heard in the first session, in the framework of the European Green Deal, the European Commission has adopted the Farm to Fork strategy to be a fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly food system. Now, the strategy sets ambitious targets and the objectives to be achieved in an even more ambitious time frame of less than a decade. In other words, in 9 growing seasons for farmers and in around 3,000 breakfasts for consumers. The strategy not only sets targets and objectives, but also proposes numerous actions and tools to bring together farmers, businesses, consumers to jointly work towards a sustainable future. Research and innovation are among the most promising tools to address these challenges and also to seize the opportunities of the transition to sustainable food systems at a global level. My name is Abdul Karim Hanif, your presenter and moderator today. I present for Khalij Times, if you're more UAE acquainted, and also for Pulse 95 Radio's morning breakfast show. Morning Majlis, so 3,000 breakfasts, and then after that we've got to think a little bit more and prepare ourselves. So we are going to be discussing the role of research and innovation as key enablers supporting the global transition to a sustainable food systems for farm to fork. More innovative and creative ways are necessary to advance quickly in the right direction. With this in mind, we will be exchanging views with our panelists on what are the main research and innovation priorities at the global level that would help us to achieve this goal. We will also discuss how these priorities could be implemented to speed up the global transition to even more sustainable food systems. Now, to kick off the discussion, we've got a video message from our next speaker, and it is going to be Her Excellency Josefa Leonel Correa Sacco, who is the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment. It'll be nice to fit it in all this in a business card, but let's listen in from Her Excellency Josefa Leonel Correa Sacco.
Your Excellencies, the Commissioner for Agriculture and the Commissioner for Health and Food Safety of the European Union, fellow panelists, allow me to stand on the existing protocol. Warm regards and best wishes from the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Moussa Faki Mahamat. He is proud of our enduring intercontinental partnership that has resulted into promoting multiple annual programs on agriculture, rural development, water, and environment. I am delighted to be part of the high-level dialogue to reflect on the status quo and define better pathway that will ensure that our generation is not held responsible for compromising the lives and livelihoods of future generations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am looking forward to strengthening partnership to scale up agriculture innovation that are promising for Africa, such as novel seeds and traits, crop production, products, and digital solutions that manage diseases, weeds, pests, and resources while reducing land use rate as well as a number of applications. Consistency and continuity of proven action and the results are.
Et les résultats sont un impératif. Donc nous sommes en train d'apprendre des leçons et nous sommes en train de nous adapter pour permettre de réaliser les objectifs durables du développement. Et donc je vous remercie pour votre attention. Merci beaucoup.
Yes, very much looking.
Où nous approchons vers des nouvelles discussions. Donc, je vais souhaiter nos panélistes. Donc, nous allons accueillir Mrs. Ismahan El-Wafi. Elle a bien sûr plus de 2 décennies en agriculture. Dr El-Wafi est connu pour bien sûr promouvoir l'agriculture et aussi les femmes dans les recherches également. Et aussi elle est reconnue pour son travail.
He also holds a PhD in genetics. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Then we have Mrs. Claudia Sadov, who is the CGIAR Executive Management Team Convener and Managing Director for Research Delivery and Impact. She was previously the Director General of the International Water Management Institute and also spent over 20 years at the World Bank in positions including Lead Economist and Global Lead for Water Security and Water Resources Management. She has also been appointed Distinguished Visiting Scholar at Oxford University and also a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Water Security and Fulbright Scholar. Please welcome Mrs. Claudia Sadov. We will also be joined virtually by Mrs. Marion Jansen, who is the Director of the Trade and Agricultural Directorate at the OECD. She has previously served and held senior positions in the World Trade Organization, the International Labour Office, as well as the International Trade Center. In these roles, she has provided support to trade negotiations and also to WTO trade dispute settlement. She has represented different organizations at the G7 and G20 level and led critical interagency collaborations and also major interdisciplinary research networks. So she'll be joining us virtually today as well. And our next speaker is going to be Mr. The Ambassador Pio Wenhoopt, who is a permanent representative of Switzerland to the Food and Agriculture Organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the World Food Programme in Rome. He is an agroeconomist specializing in systemic approaches by training and has long experience in development diplomacy based on extensive fieldwork in areas such as rural development, microfinance, and public health. He also joined the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation in 1995, and from 2010 he was also in charge of the SDC's Global Programme Food Security. His expertise in the field of food security is well known, and we look forward to this discussion today. And we're really looking forward to this discussion today. And we are going to make sure that we've got everything lined up for this discussion. And we've also got Mr. Philippe Marouin, who is the President and Director General of the Institute of National Research for Agriculture, INRAE, because I do not want to butcher my French today this morning. It will be very embarrassing, but we look forward to the discussions today. Thank you to our panelists for joining us. Okay, so let's begin the discussions. Now, the big question is, what are the key research and innovation needs to address the challenges and also to seize the opportunities of the global transition to sustainable food systems? In other words, what are the future R&I priorities for multilateral cooperation? So what is missing? What could be further intensified, and what else is needed when it comes to international cooperation on research and innovation? So can we have Mr. Sadov to answer the first question. Ms. Sadov.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. And frankly, such a pleasure to see food and food systems a central focus both of the EC and at the Expo this year. So I think we've heard very clearly from all of the framing discussions that there's an absolute global consensus that we need to really transform our food systems, to meet multiple objectives that we've not really focused our food systems on before, to meet objectives not just of hunger but of nutrition, also of good livelihoods and jobs, sustainability, equity, poverty, climate resilience, areas of global priority that haven't been necessarily an explicit focus of food systems adequately in the past. And in order for this to happen, in order for, in particular, our 500 million smallholder farmers, who provide about a third of the world's food, this can't be done using the same crop varieties and the same farming methods that are now decades old. So research and development and innovation is absolutely at the heart of this sort of a transformation. At CGIAR, we have a new research and innovation strategy that tries to focus on what we consider the priority areas for transformation. And we focus on the science that we need to transform food, land, and water systems in 3 what we call action areas. And the first action area is genetic innovations, which is working at the seed level, at the genetics level, for more nutritious and more resilient crop varieties. And at this level, we work with gene banks. CGIAR manages a range of gene banks, and these are really the biological fundamental building blocks of our past, our present, and our future food systems. These genetic materials are what we use to begin to build more resilient and more nutrient-dense crops, to try to biofortify crops, to really address nutritional needs, malnutrition, across the world.
Mrs. Lordy, can I ask you to raise your mic
Sorry.
level? Yes, so that we can hear you correctly. That's perfect now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the tip. The second action area really raises our focus to resilient agri-food systems, looking at the systems through which we produce food and the way in which it's produced and distributed. And here at the Resilient Agri-Food System space, we focus on research and development to increase sustainable agricultural productivity and the availability of nutrient-dense foods. We also look at the way in which we produce food in terms of the impact that it can have on human health as well, like zoonoses, for example, and ways in which we can increase the resilience of smallholder farmers and the way they farm and the way they manage their livelihoods to be more resilient. You can think here of approaches, for example, that are regenerative for land and water rather than extractive. You can think here about aquatic-based food systems that can help us address the micronutrients that are missing in so many diets around the world. And our third action area of focus is one that we call systems transformation. And this focus is really on the economic, the social, and the environmental systems in which food systems operate, because those systems are affected as well and need to be transformed. So these are the broad-scale challenges around poverty and malnutrition, about sustainable land and water management and adaptation to climate change, vulnerability to shocks from climate or pandemics. And here you can think of the tremendous opportunities of better land and water management, the technologies we have now, for example, to predict rainfall and water availability at continental scale and all the way down to farmer scale as well. And in addition, in the policy space, the tremendous opportunity to repurpose our policies and our spending, in many cases, in order to guide the change that we want to see in our food systems. So, for example, a recent report just out from IFPRI and the World Bank looked at repurposing government agricultural expenditures and found that by repurposing even a small percentage of what governments currently spend on agriculture and repurposing to focus on greater productivity and lower greenhouse gas emissions, we could lower greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture by 40% and return millions of hectares of land to natural use as well. We need to put in place the incentives, the innovations, the technologies, the proven research technologies to make all of this happen. So we see these as priorities. We also see them as tremendously exciting opportunities, and it's events like these, discussions like these, that will give us the momentum to guide ourselves toward those new transformed food systems. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Sadov, for that wonderful stat as well for us to understand in terms of how much we can save with the greenhouse emissions. Let's get Ambassador Pio Wenobst to share his thoughts on this idea of research and innovation and what is missing and what needs to be, what's required further to intensify our ambitions.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for inviting a Swiss multilateralist today. Yeah. So I've got 3 minutes, so I will try to focus on a few things. And by the way, it's very difficult for me to stay in 3 minutes because I'm from the southern part of Switzerland, so we are all very talkative. So we need maybe 2 or 3 things that we need really to recognize them. One is that population dynamics with fast and rapid urbanization everywhere is not going to disappear tomorrow. It's going to happen, and that's it. And this means this is something we have to take into account. This is one point. The second is the link between food and determinants of health, including social determinants of health, for all the divide, north-south, and so on, that also internal society. This is becoming so evident that has to be also embedded in how we formulate even our research projects. And the third, of course, you're an expert, super expert in water, and both of you basically in water and non-water. It's about, of course, the use of resources, climate change, and so on, and all the effects of this. The implication of these elements for the research in the future is that, yeah, let's embrace this interconnectivity and digitalization, but apply to systems. not just for the sake of having drones around, right? Because if we can do this, we can even help the young ones that would like to have something different here. We can not only help them, but we can also learn to listen from them, because they're the ones that actually they can use this technology. I'm not very good, but I do believe that this is an important element that is actually could unify us. It's not just something from the north, but it's something that really could work in order to help better understand and support systemic approach. Systemic approach means basically that you consider that, for instance, agriculture, and this is a very old the Swiss, we always love it to say that, and we keep on saying it, is agriculture and food systems are multifunctional for the same reason I was saying. It's not just producing food. It's also reorganizing the territory. It's something more than food. So research will need also to focus in the next few years, about evidence on true values and true costs, which are not the same thing. True cost is something intermediate. It's like when you're taking finally into account climate change and other effects on what you're doing, you're talking about true costs. And you say, also it's evident. No, it's not happening. It's not evident. We are not doing it. And research is not focusing enough on this. And if you, on top of it, you look into the true values of food, what does it mean, traditions and renewed traditions? For instance, yeah, we keep on talking about different kind of diets and so on. I mean, this also needs to be, and this will be more or less a kind of a final step that will help us in getting together. I stop here because if not, I suppose these two elements there. Mm-hmm. So interconnectivity and digitalization better apply to systems, and at least a reality check on what is true costs and true values in order to prepare ourselves also to change financial system and structures, because at the end, this is where we have to get.
True. We've reached that stage, isn't it? Now, let's get our next speaker, Mr. Philippe Marwin, to shed some light on the multilateral cooperation priorities and what could be further intensified when it comes to the cooperation on research and innovation.
Thank you very much. First of all, as my ambassador, French ambassador in the French pavilion, I will have to speak in French, but hopefully we have a wonderful translator, so I hope that will be good. Oui, je voudrais revenir sur les défis, parce qu'on dit qu'il faut beaucoup tout changer dans les systèmes alimentaires, mais pourquoi? Il va falloir des changements importants. Si on regarde ce qui s'est passé sur les 50 années passées, le monde a triplé la production alimentaire grâce au progrès de la recherche, grâce aux politiques publiques, grâce à la modernisation des agricultures dans le monde. Malgré ça, on a aujourd'hui 3 milliards de personnes qui ont du mal à accéder à une alimentation saine. Et on se prépare à passer en 2050 à 9 à 10 milliards d'habitants sur la planète, avec le dérèglement climatique qui s'accélère, avec les mégalopoles qui grandissent pour accueillir la population, donc les sols agricoles se réduisent, sont artificialisés. Il faudrait arrêter ou limiter la déforestation pour éviter d'amplifier encore le dérèglement climatique. Et donc, en même temps, préparer la décarbonation de l'économie, c'est-à-dire se préparer à un monde sans carbone fossile, qui va faire appel de plus en plus à la biomasse.
We have to continue, and we might think it's an impossible equation with all the research to get to this food security with all the problem in the climate change. And these are also questions to the research and challenges. How can we make research for the environment, for the food? It's easy to say it on the podium, but it's very difficult for the scientists. So, with our partners in the world, to have all this vision of those challenges, and I lost the voice, the mic. I thought that there was no batteries. So this is the challenge. We should have this global comprehension. How can we plan for 2030, 2050? It's more than a lot of breakfast, 3,000 breakfasts. How can we prepare the studies to go along with the farmers? The good news, there are solutions that could response for the good food challenges and economy challenges. We work on that. We work with our colleagues in India, Bangalore, with an approach of living lab, with introductions of vegetables, with genetics and better gestion of water. We think that we can improve the food in India. Yes, of course, where we have lentils. This is the biggest country consuming lentils in India. So this is the how can we imagine those solutions? We have to work with economists, agronomes, and with the transitional actors, with the education also. So it's something stimulating, extraordinarily stimulating. This is what we want to like.
Well, let's get developing on this multilateral approach as well. Let's get the thoughts of our panelist who's very kindly joined us virtually. Ms. Marion Jansen, the OECD Director for Trade and Agriculture. The big question, what are the future research and innovation priorities for this multilateral cooperation? If you'd like to shed some light on that as well.
Thank you, Abdul Karim Hanif, and above all, very sorry not to be there with you live today for this interesting panel. You will hear me repeat certain issues that you have heard from other panelists, because I think at the OECD we fully agree with the size and the importance of the challenge ahead. We like to speak about the triple challenge for food systems, the challenge to feed in a nutritious way a growing world population. Second, the challenge to also provide incomes to those working in agriculture and along the food supply chains. And third, to do all this in an environmentally sustainable way. So that is complex. Now, we have to do this in a context where we are probably a bit going in the wrong direction. After many decades of increases in total factor productivity, because that's what we need. We will need to increase the productivity of agriculture in order not to use more land, because change in land use is one of the important factors increasing greenhouse gas emissions. So we need, in order to meet the triple challenge, an increase in productivity. And after decades of increases in productivity growth, we are seeing productivity growth slowing down. The reasons for this are probably multiple, due to climate change, increased extreme weather events. But the fact is that we are not going in the right direction. The second problem is that we observe at the OECD, when we measure productivity growth and compare this to how agro-environmental indicators are evolving in the same period. So we look at what is happening to greenhouse gas emission, to nitrogen, to pesticides, and other indicators. We see that in some countries, yes, productivity may be increasing, but this comes at the expense of sustainability indicators. So we may have productivity growth, but not sustainable productivity growth. So that's the second problem. Now the third problem, and here our findings are aligned with those of the World Bank. We assess at the OECD over time how governments are supporting agriculture. Government support to agriculture has traditionally been high, but that support does not necessarily go into research and innovation, into infrastructure, into skills, the actions that we would need in order to drive sustainable productivity growth. Only $1 out of $6 going to agriculture is spent in these areas that are driving policies are driving the agricultural sector in the right direction. So we call upon governments to indeed redirect spending into the direction of research and innovation, and with our networks that we have at the OECD around the total factor productivity, farm level productivity, or our research programs that I would be happy to speak more about later. With these networks, we stand ready to help governments to move jointly in the right direction.
Very, very important points mentioned about sustainable productivity growth and the call and the requirement for investment in research and innovation. So I'd like to get Ismahane Eluafe, the chief scientist, to shed some light and as an intervention to this idea as well on the importance of research and innovation. Can we get your thoughts as well on this matter?
Yeah, thank you very much. And if we think about it, I think we don't have a problem. And I will explain why. If you think about how much we are producing enough for everybody. We are producing diverse in different places. What is wrong is our way of seeing it. It's distribution. That's the problem. If you think even of water, there is enough water, but it's not well distributed. Wealth, it's not well distributed. So it's the way that we are using resources, the way that we are managing our resources and our lifestyle and our system that is wrong. And many of it is trade, actually, and I'm glad Marian is with us here. So if we think about production per se, for the number of people we have, there is enough. But there is so much complexity behind. We have created a system that does not work. We have created a system that is not good for people, it's not good for the planet. And we are still insisting to fix it. Instead of saying this does not work, let's turn it down completely. Let's go back to zero and let's restart to think everything. So the system we are working with is the system that was decided post-World War II. And we inherit it. And we don't want to think beyond that. We keep saying we need to do this and this. All these little things wouldn't make a difference. So for me, it's really, let's get the number out. And those number out is that this is the population you have, this is how much we are producing, it's enough. It shouldn't be a problem to align things. This ecosystem, it's good. Like, it's a very good example that you brought, Philip, of India. India used to produce a lot of lentils, millet, and so many other crops. They are the country with the highest anemia rate. It doesn't make any sense. So we are much more in the dynamic. I produce what is not maybe better for my ecosystem. I sell it out. It transformed 1,000 kilometers away. It comes back to me 100 times more expensive. We have complicated our life completely, and we are not going back to zero to rethink it. And I think that's really what is wrong. Is that really, and that's why I'm very happy we are talking about food system. Because before we were very much narrow in our mind. We think about, do we need to put fertilizer? Do we need genetics? Do we need this and that? Now we are thinking food system, and farm to fork, it's everything. It's our life. I always say, if there is something we have to fix, is this. We have so much diseases. We have so many poor in the people, in the populations, in the planet Earth. Only between 2019 and 2020, we got 166 million people that went back again to poverty and malnutrition. So we cannot continue. I think we are at a point where it's so bad that it can get worse. We have to back up, rethink it, and do it well this time. And research and innovation, that's where it's going to help. So now we have data to understand all of this. Before we used to talk, oh, we don't know traceability, what's happening. Now we have traceability. So we know, for example, and that's the World Trade data, that any product cross borders at least twice. So there's nothing that you throw or that you export from your country that does not come back to you, basically. So our global system, it's not efficient. The numbers are there, but we have to put them together to say this system is too complex, let's simplify it. And that's why I like, although I'm not a finance person, they say always in finance, when it gets complicated, go to basics. And that's what we need to do. We need to go back to basics.
Oh, very powerful sentiments shared over there. But moving on with the discussions, now we do understand, the key R&I priorities, but the big challenge now is how to implement those priorities and how to get those challenges addressed as well. So the big question now we're going to ask our panelists are what are the main challenges for actors in the food systems in innovating and exchanging best practices? How can we maximize the impact of innovative solutions on the ground? And how can your institution support them in finding knowledge and using innovative solutions? So, Mr. Mawen, can we start with you first in terms of your institution helping finding new knowledge? I know you gave an example of India earlier, but how, across the globe, where can we start?
Merci. Oui, je crois que...
I think we have interdisciplinary things to take into account the challenges. And the third key is to associate all the actors, which means to save time in the innovation, because the actors are determinant. As we talk about labs, we will develop that. Those in France, we work on a complicated subject, how to get the best wine or cognac with 2 to 3 times less in pesticides. And we do this, of course, with the NGOs, with the farmers, to prepare them at the same time with the researchers. We do that in Africa with our colleagues from CGD, and the fermented food are very important. They bring local resources. We develop those in Africa, and we are working with 20 research programs in Africa. In China, we worked also with colleagues, Chinese colleagues, scientists, with those approach to have greenings agricultures in China. It's not easy. So we have to get a lot of multidisciplinary things on pilot territories. And my second message would be, we are not enough connected, despite all what I said, on the international level. We have a lot of bilateral project. We lack of an international organization to gather all those people. This is a message for FAO, and it's a message for everyone here. And
panelists as well, to find these solutions, how can we maximize the impact of innovative solutions on the ground and improve this sustainability? So I'd like to ask Mrs. Jansen to share her thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much for this question, and I immediately follow up on the points made by Mr. Philippe Mauguin. We organize, we run, we lead a number of international platforms related to productivity in agriculture that try to enhance exchange among researchers, but also exchange among policymakers, statisticians, everybody working in agricultural productivity in order to facilitate progress. Now, I take from the last point made that our platforms are not good enough yet, and I will be happy to reach out to INRA. We are based in France at OECD in order to make sure that we do even better. But before we do that, let me explain what we are currently doing. First, in order to understand how at the aggregate or at the farm level things are moving, we work with two networks that assess productivity in agriculture. We work with relevant institutions at the governmental level to assess total factor productivity in agriculture, to compare how are things moving in different countries, to ensure that we have comparable ways of measuring and that we know how the total factor productivity is moving among our members. We, however, do not only work at the aggregate level, we also work at the firm level, because it's not necessarily all farms that move at the same speed. So we also have a network of researchers that work at the farm level in different countries to assess productivity at the farm level. And we see, for instance, that countries pursue different policies, where in some countries like France and Italy, there are attempts are being made to make sure that the least productive farms get closer to the frontier, increase their productivity levels, whereas in other countries like Australia, there's a focus on enhancing productivity of the most productive farms. So there we also, our experts have regularly come together and exchange information, knowledge, and compare. Now, here it is about what are we doing to enhance productivity, how are we measuring this, but we also support research. Now, we do not conduct ourselves research in agricultural productivity, but we fund researchers and we also facilitate exchange of research findings through our corporate research program. So we provide fellowships to researchers on every aspect of agriculture, really, be it pesticide limitations, be it reducing residuals of herbicides in the soil, be it reducing carbon emissions of certain practices. We are very open to the type of research of fellows that we fund, and we fund conferences that bring researchers from different members of the corporate research program together. I would like to invite those OECD members and also non-OECD members who are not part of that program yet to please join it and to become part of this platform. And France actually recently, last year or 2 years ago, re-entered the program. One aspect of that program is that research and conferences are always meant to be close to the policymakers. So we have very interesting examples where conferences led automatically to an exchange, for instance, in a country like New Zealand, with policymakers at the highest level, and outcomes of the conferences were implemented a few years later. So it's not research in an ivory tower or in an individual lab, but something that is meant to go directly to the policymaker. We have a plan to bring all this very much to the attention of the highest level of policy making this year. We will organize a conference, a meeting of ministers, of OECD ministers and partner countries in November this year in Paris. This event will be led by the ministers for agriculture of New Zealand and of Canada. And we look forward to seeing our members at this event and to jointly drive the agenda further forward in order to ensure that we find solutions that work for our plates, but also for our planet.
Well, we wish you all the very best for that conference in November, and bringing those policymakers down on one table to discuss this further. But with the issue of sustainable productivity growth, which was rightly highlighted as well. So I'd like to bring the focus to the Food and Agricultural Organization and the chief scientist who's joined us today. How is your institution going to support, or how can they support in finding new knowledge and using innovative solutions that improve sustainability, and what has been the main challenges when it comes to the actors in the food system in innovating and also exchanging these best practices?
So there are many challenges.
Can we get you to use your microphone as well? Sorry.
I saw you without mic. So
yeah.
Okay. So there are a number of challenges that we are looking at, and maybe other than my philosophical answer the first time, which went from the heart, if we think about it, we do need innovation. I always say there's a lot of innovation that never made it to the farmers. And I think it's much easier for us to scale up those. You think only about irrigation. Africa has only 7% of irrigated land. So there is a lot of things that has to do with affordability and the distribution of wealth that I discussed earlier. So that's one. The second one we need really, it's really bring up new innovations. And I think we are at a point where the three agendas that my colleague talked about, the food security agenda, the biodiversity agenda, and the climate change agenda are finally connected. And because they are connected, and because we have to think about the true value and the true cost that Pio was talking about, it is a better time for us to really find solutions that are better for everything, what we call the three pillars of sustainability. So better also for people, for the planet, and for the economy as well. So it is, and in that perspective, it's different than just trying to increase productivity or trying to increase this vitamin or that other component. But the challenge we have ahead of us, it's one of them, it's investment. We don't have enough investment. We don't have enough investment, and most of the innovation are way too expensive, in the South particularly. Most farmers can't afford the smallest, not even a certified seed, nor an irrigation, nor a fertilizer, nothing. So that's one issue. It's investment in the research to find solution, but also investment in scaling up those solutions for the smallholder farmers, particularly in the South. The other investment, the other challenge is really the capacity. Do we have enough capacity worldwide really to make it? And that's a huge area that we see really there is another déphasage. It's, and then we're going to get in education because that's one area that needs to be fixed as well. So they push us into more and more specialization, whereas the issue needs more global. It's like right now, you go to a doctor, if you don't get to a generalist, you don't know what's happening to you. So it's the same thing for us in the agri-food system. We are way too much precise and too much specialized, and we lost the big picture. So, and that's why thinking food system is a must. So finally, we got the UN Food System Summit last year, and I think we got really the attention of politicians on the food system level. The third part is institutions. We have too many silos in institutions, and you see that everywhere. You see it in the EU, you see it in the UN, you see it in the nations itself. So we tend to really to be in compartment and we don't talk to each other. And that's where what Philippe said, it's very important. We need to interconnect between us at the national level, at the regional level, and at the global level. And we have an outdated agenda. So our agenda is outdated because, again, we're thinking in the same system. We're not yet for a paradigm shift, and I think that paradigm shift is a must. And the food system challenge is that people are interested in it, but very few people understand it. So we tend to go with mouth and words. So we have been talking about value chain. People start to understand value chain. Let's talk about food system. Complicated now. But it's the right word, but we need to understand it well. And we need really to think about all the entry points to improve it, make it more efficient, and make it better. And that's really our new strategic framework. That's a layaway to really what FAO is about. So we have our next 10-year strategy. And our next year strategy, it's a vision of leaving no one behind through having a more efficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable agri-food system. And we are aiming for 4 betters: better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life for all. And under those, we tried really to put those 4 betters. We know they are aspirational. We know that they are very ambitious. And they are not silos. They are really interconnected. So as Marion said earlier, we do need to produce more. We can't say, although, as I said earlier, we have enough, but it's not well distributed, but most of the people that needs more food needs to produce more. So it doesn't make sense that in our time that maize could be 12 to 15 ton in UK or France or Switzerland, and then it's about 2 ton in Africa, 1.52. So there is a huge gap in productivity, particularly in the South, and that's really a low-hanging fruit that we have to work on. But we need also better nutrition. Again, the example of India, instead of producing, I don't know, wheat in India, may be better for you to produce leguminacea or millet or other crops. We need also better environment because finally we understand we can't continue this way. So I think those that emit and those that don't emit, we are all in the same plate, and we understand that the boundaries of the planet are really, really, we have overpassed them already. And then better life, because by the end, agri-food system is everything. Agri-food system right now is the source of income for more than 2/3 of us on this planet Earth, when you look at the whole thing, again, from the farm to the fork, including supermarket, including processing and what have you. But also, it's the only thing we can't live without. So we need to give it a higher priority. So food, it's not only that we can survive with it. I always tell to my kids, you can survive without internet and the phone, but without food, no. So food has to come again on the highest priority, particularly nutrition. And to just close for that, as a chief scientist, we are doing the first science and innovation strategy, and we are really pushing for more science and innovation to really get to those 4 better. And in our perspective, because we have 194 members, and we are representing everybody, we are very open to all methodologies. So when we talk about innovation, we include agroecology, biotechnologies, agricultural mechanization, digital agriculture, renewable agriculture, regenerative agriculture, but also all the kind of innovations. So we don't need to limit ourselves in technological innovation, but we need also to think policy innovation, institutional innovation, social innovation. So I think it's time to embrace it all and really see if we could make it happen better this time, keeping in mind really again that the resources are very limited and that the distribution has to be discussed as well. Over to you.
Certainly, the cross-sectoral innovation very crucial. I'd like to get Ms. Claudia Sadoff to give the CGIAR's perspective in terms of the innovation and the innovative solutions on the ground.
Thank you. It's very interesting to follow the opportunities that we discussed in this sort of first round with the real challenges that are facing us, and why aren't those opportunities that we all see, because you heard a lot of commonality in those, why aren't those being achieved? The CG recently supported a commission, the Commission on Sustainable Agricultural Innovation, COSI, and that commission found that we are underinvesting, that there is a gap in investment in agricultural innovation of $15.2 billion a year. That's the gap that would need to be filled if we wanted to achieve the SDGs. The SDGs, which are our agreed framework for what we as a global community want for our world. So why are we under-investing over $15 billion a year in something as basic and something as far-reaching as our food systems? So if we want to talk about opportunities or we want to talk about challenges, financing is a great place to start. And it's interesting to understand why the gap is so wide. And part of it, I think, is simply scale. Listen to my friend Ismahan, and the scale of the challenge here, of the redirect that we need, is enormous. Right? And what we're talking about redirecting is large-scale, complex systems that are different in every country and that are all over the world. So we've discussed as well that the changes that we need to see in all of those systems are really quite profound. Paradigm shifts, we hear words like this, redesign, reset. So it's also this complexity and the interconnectivity of what we're trying to change that makes it so daunting, makes it, frankly, require so much investment, right? Why is that gap so big? What are the things that are holding us back? Financing, but also the complexity and the interconnectedness itself. At the CGIAR, we look at 5 impact areas which we believe are potentially affected by everything we do in food systems. And that's not just food and nutrition, which of course is one, but also livelihoods and jobs and poverty, right? Also social inclusion, also climate adaptation and climate mitigation in every investment and every innovation that we have in agriculture. Also environmental health and biodiversity in every intervention that we have in this space. So that potential interconnectivity, that potential complexity is part of what makes it so hard to simply change the system that we know simply needs to change. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to work in a much more systems-oriented approach. And in practice, that means pulling together essentially bundles of innovation, different partners' perspectives, specializations, disciplines in packages of work that can be more effective. Bringing together the public sector, the private sector, researchers, universities, farmers, and policymakers as well. And this gets to, I think, the third aspect for me, financing, complexity, and partnerships, the partnerships that you need in order to really see change. In CGIAR, we have over 3,000 partners, and these partners are absolutely central to everything that we do, from deciding what it is that is needed, hearing the demand of farmers and decision makers across the world, to understanding the specific contextual specificities that you need to make something work somewhere, and also to uptake those solutions, a readiness and an ability and an affordability to uptake those solutions and scale them out. These partnerships are the only way in which we can really make change. And so we try to work with our partners in three ways. We try three pathways. First of all, to co-develop solutions, to really work together to find the technologies, the services, the practices that need changing. We work to develop capacity. There's a tremendous amount of capacity, but the world is changing. So imagine as we're doing climate data work and some really exciting, innovative technologies, we need capacity enhancement from those who develop, to those who distribute, to those who use those technologies, right down to the farmers who need to take that information in. So we co-develop, we focus on capacity enhancement, and we also focus on policy and enabling environments, because we need enabling environments to be able to scale the solutions that we come out with, and to target and scale those solutions to some of the least advantaged groups, and to women and to youth, and to older farmers as well. So let me give just one example of ways in which these partnerships and co-development have been really quite effective in scaling up innovation, and that is a program that CGR supported called CCAFS. It was the Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food Security program. I'm sure many of you know it. And it helped to deliver climate information that now reaches millions of farmers across West Africa. The science was absolutely critical. It was based on some extraordinary breakthroughs and advancements in climate modeling, but also research on how farmers understand temperature and rainfall probabilities and how you need to communicate it to them. And it was built on a series of partnerships to create the environment for uptake. Work very closely with local radio stations, with government departments to diminish the barriers to actually sharing meteorological information, which is a real issue for any of you who have ever worked in that space, and building the capacity amongst extension workers, extension agents, and farmers to actually understand and use the climate information, to help them time their planting, their harvests, to understand when and how much rain might be coming, because 95% of the land in Africa that is farmed through rain-fed agriculture. As Mohan was saying, just 6% is irrigated. So we see these incredible challenges of financing. We need that commitment. This is not an easy fix. The complexity, if we really want to ask of our food systems to impact all these other spaces that we know it impacts, but we want to guide it more mindfully to those impacts and to build those partnerships. These for us are some of the crucial challenges that we face. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for painting the picture over there as well in terms of the big challenges and the financing gap that we see when it comes to the innovative practices. But let's get the international perspective. We've got His Excellency Pio Wenhupst, who's the Ambassador of Switzerland to the United Nations, to give us the reaction from the UN perspective. Would you like to share some thoughts on what the main challenges are for actors to innovate and also share expertise at the international level?
Thank you for the question. Really an easy one. Many of you participated, or at least in a way or another, to the process leading to the UN Food System Summit, right? At the beginning, it was supposed to be intergovernmental negotiations. You know what does it mean? In the multilateral system, countries take basically the lead, and actually they try to shape a consensus on the matter. quite rapidly, it was clear that in less than 2 years, you are not going to get there to find a unifying vision, because we're talking again about a unifying vision of the future of societies through the lens of food system transformation. This is what we are looking for, right? So a good way to try to get there was to transform it in People Summit. So participation at country level, civil society, and so on. Young ones, you name it, okay? Was actually a fairly interesting, and let's say, fairly interesting, a lot of energy demanding exercise, but there bear some fruits. Everybody knows that this unifying vision is not there yet. Why? Because at the end, we are coming from a past. And actually, even research institutions, I participated at least at 3 reforms of the CGR from the side of the donor, right? And I think you're going to the 5th or something like this, which is nothing bad, by the way. If it's needed, do reform. You've been talking about a kind of research that 10 years ago you were not doing. Social, link social aspect related to soil nutrients was this. Right now we are getting there. So this is a good point, but still we don't have this unifying vision. So basically, the messages I would like to give is, when we see that stakeholders, member states, they get lost in translation when they are negotiating. So when you see that one of the coalitions that has been proposed on agroecology, this means the hippie times of 68 is coming back. And then on the other hand, you have got the group of Cairns that doesn't say it openly, but behind says, no, we cannot go there. There is something there that is missing in translation, because none of the two ideas are right. This is not the point. If we are talking about the agroecology, you can imagine agroecology and including organic farming and so on. In Switzerland, 20 years ago, nobody could afford this, right? And you would anyway, even if now 20% of the food consumption, because at the end you have to look at the food consumption as well, is organic produce, you would say, okay, but this is stuff for rich people. Now look at the coalition of agroecology. Out of 21 or 22 countries, 15 are from Africa. And the lead is from Africa. It's not France or Switzerland that we are part of it, but it's Senegal that is leading. So why? Because what we are not talking about what I said previously, but we are talking about exactly trying to find a way to transform what this man, you say it was an introduction that was a kind of philosophical. Yeah, but this philosophical introduction that you gave is key. Nobody's saying that trade is not needed. But maybe it's not needed to have, I don't know, sorry if I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but you don't need maybe the Dutch tomatoes going to Spain and the Spanish tomato going to the Netherlands to keep the truck full, I suppose. I don't know what's the point. So, I don't know. So, and this is where we are talking about the need of connectivity. Digitalization is going to help in this sense. It's going to help the millions of young ones. They want a new profession. I decided not to study agriculture, but I did it actually. I don't know why. I must be a kind of suicidal. Why? Because I was doing kind of work in a Swiss farm, and then I would say, okay, what is the work? The work is 6 days out of 7. Great. So I have 1 day off. Great. On Sunday. Yes, but after milking the cows from 4 in the morning to 8, and then coming back again to milk them from 4 to 8. And then people would say, okay, the young ones don't want to stay there. It's not only, I mean, the average age of farmers here in Europe is 60 or something like this, so they live around something like this. And the young ones in the periphery of Lagos runs to Lagos, 25 million people, and you have deserts around around Lagos. So it's not that they don't have the same problem, the same willingness to find a way to develop new professions, new way of linking and creating added value, because another thing is also true. While going to urbanization, the part of the GDP that is in a country produced and job created through agriculture is decreasing, not increasing. It is not going to increase. So if you want to create jobs while you have still having a growth of population in several parts of the world, you better think about different kind of profession where you link together the different parts of the system. And this, I do believe that there is the energy to do that. I do believe that there is the scope. We have connectivity. It's true that half of the planet still has no connectivity, but it's also true that the communication revolution started in Africa. Mobile money started in Kenya, not in Switzerland. I'm still using cash, by the way, time to time in Switzerland, which is really strange, right? And this is to finish, because I also to finish with the, you know. So there are things that are there. There are things that are the positive. No, yeah, all this is actually is positive. Actually, it's nothing negative, but we have to see that and agree that finally it's like this. But there are experiments. There is the One Planet Network. We have been working several countries together that is trying to go in this direction. There are reforms of different institutions. You say where you want to lead the innovations, etc., with FAO. So things are getting there, but we need to push them further. And to finish, the youth. Of course, is not saying the young ones, but because they're young, they're progressive. No. Some of the young ones are progressive, some of the young ones are not progressive, like anyone. But what is important is to give voice, and not only voice, but leadership. And this is the reason why in the multilateral arena, because you're asking me, why are you saying these kind of things? Because at the end, we are going to have a negotiation in this summer about trying to get a policy convergency into define a policy recommendation with a convergency process that links youth to agriculture and food systems. I will be the rapporteur, so I will have to facilitate the negotiation. And I'm already scared, because anyway, I did several facilitations, including QCPRs and CPDs in New York in the past. I know what does it mean. But I think we can do it, but we have to stop getting lost in translation, explain and try to understand and listen to each other when we are thinking that we are so opposite in our way of going. Sorry.
No, it's great to get some positive light, as you mentioned earlier. But sadly, we need to find innovation to pause time, but sadly we can't do that at all. We are running short of it. We have time for one question from the audience and one response, sadly. Well, we do have a break after this, so if you've got any particular further discussions, you can do so. I see a raised hand just at the end of the... we've got our ladies with the microphones. Can we raise your hand once again, please? Can you pass the microphone over for one question and then just one response from our panel, please?
Thank you very much for this very informative panel discussion. I go back to what Dr. Asmahan mentioned. We see all that we have really enough food for everybody. But how can we regulate that? Because of waste food, because of war, because of poor people, they don't have food. You're always talking about we have to do, we have to find. But who we? I see this should be on level of politician, on level of EU Food Security Committee. That's the solution. How do you see it?
If anyone would like to answer that question.
I can try to give my personal view to that critical question. I think we all the level should be engaged. Otherwise, there's no probability of success. So we need the politicians at the countries and multilateral organization level to convince them we have to shape an agenda with a common vision, as we say, of all these challenges. I think that's the responsibility of scientists for all over the countries to speak together, as say our colleague from Switzerland. And that begins with respect, openness of all. We have to go out of our silo. We have to consider all that complexity. So scientists should work together, should give science policy brief clear to politicians. But we are also citizens. We have also our children. We know that we have to move. And I think that engage also all the actors. So it's difficult to give just an answer to your question. It's political, it's government. I think we have to move at the citizen level, at the company level, at the farmer level, at the scientist level, and also at the government level. So it's a huge challenge, but I think we have no choice.
Well, rightly concluded over there. So to wrap up the discussions, let's welcome our next speaker. It is Mr. Tassos Haniotis, who is the Director for Strategy and Policy Analysis, DG Agri at European Commission. You can be on stage. You can all be on stage, it's fine.
Thank you very much. Wrap up after all these impressive speakers. Hey, how do you do it? First of all, you don't do it with any written statements, so I haven't prepared any. You do it with notes like that, and you do it very briefly and to the point. But let me try to make a link also with the introductory part and what we will discuss later on. And if this is about the transformation of our food systems, if it is about transition, it is above all about leadership. And there are plenty of definitions of leadership. There is one years ago I learned and stuck to my mind. Leadership is about four basic things. It's about a vision, and I don't think that we disagree that we all have a vision, aspirational one, where we want to go. But it's also about sense-making, innovating, and relating. Innovating and relating are the two themes, if you want, that I will come later on, because these are the next two panels. But sense-making is the challenge that you all addressed here. And allow me to say, you didn't address it in a manner that would allow us automatically to come up with what is common sense. And we need to be very much aware of that. We need to be aware of that because it is true that repurposing of what we do is a major thing. I'm glad that Marian mentioned that already, and you can tell, if you want, that the farm-to-fork exercise is a repurposing exercise. And where you repurpose your policies, nobody's happy. The ones that are left behind with what they were used, and the ones that always think that you're not going far enough. But in this type of repurposing, there are two elements that we need to address very clearly. I think it was a very pertinent example that in a French pavilion during the French presidency, the example of consumer taste and preferences was the one that you mentioned, and which, by the way, I agree fully. But we also need to be aware that when it comes to food tastes and preferences, we do have culturally determined, historically determined differences that are not going to go away overnight. And we need to be aware and allow farmers to get the signals of time and be able to respond to what is happening, but also be aware of the fact that this is going to be a very difficult exercise. In my view, when we go on the farm side, we do have more things in our hands. Because we all know that we should not only measure what is the economic performance and efficiency, but we should also measure the environmental efficiency. And we need to do it in a manner that we don't repeat the mistake we did with the economic efficiency, where we only focused on the economic aspects and forgot the environmental. We should not only focus on the environmental and forget the economic, because the social cost is going to be extremely high. And this is exactly why measurable best practices and the effects of measurable best practices, which is something that will come in the next panels, is so important. So the only thing I need to add here is that we do have a problem in translation. And the best way to do that is to go through a training like the excellent translators who we have had gone through. They understand the different languages they have translate. I'm an economist by training, and I have to learn what the physical scientists say and how they interpret sometimes the same words that they're using. And I'm pretty sure that physical scientists, or I hope at least, will be ready to go in such an exercise. And if we manage to do that, then I think that despite the difficulties, we're going to make the next step forward. And when it comes to research, the sense-making of this part, if you want, interdisciplinary approach and the manner by which we talk to each other and understand each other is essential. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tassos Haniotis, for that wonderful insight as well. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us this afternoon for all the discussions. Another round of applause for all of our panelists. We've got a break of 10 minutes only, so you'd like to step outside of the auditorium, and we shall be back again for 2 more panel discussions. Thank you for joining us today.
Test. 2.
lights? No. Should I have the machine? Shouldn't they do it themselves, or? Oh, Raquel, I have a... Okay. Yeah, so it's Roger's presentation. You mean the panel and the presentation? I think the panel is the presentation. I'm a bit confused. And they will start immediately. Then I will ask them questions. Then the panel. That's how it's done. First round, the first. Roger will start first. First, they will start with the presentation. Then I will ask them the questions. That's ownership then, right? Roger, would you like to come and familiarize yourself with the control? Yeah. And then if you want to go back, you press the red.
That should work. That should be easy
No,
enough.
on the back side?
Yeah.
And if we can keep it to 3 minutes, how many minutes do you have? That's fine. Okay. Yeah, no, that's it's okay. It's just that we only have half an hour, right?
Yeah.
And I want to leave a little bit for the audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. No worries. Yes. Yeah. Luckily, I'm not. Do I need to touch that? No. All right. It's fine. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, partners, and welcome back to yet another exciting and very inspiring session. Welcome to the second part of the conference on the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, live from the French Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai. My name is Mariam Farag, and I will be moderating the next two panels. It is my utmost pleasure because we will talk more about projects that are on ground. It is my great pleasure to welcome with us the three inspiring panelists who will be presenting innovative R&I projects and policy initiatives and programs worldwide that support the transition towards sustainable food systems from farm to fork. Our discussion has led us to go through the challenges and the opportunities of the transition to sustainable food systems, thanks to the distinguished opening interventions of this conference today. We then looked into the future key research and innovations, priorities that can help us address the challenges and seize these opportunities. We have also discussed how to best implement R&I priorities to maximize the impacts on the ground. We also addressed the role of youth when it comes to the R&I and the sustainability of farm to fork. Now it is time to go one step further to discuss what is done today on ground. Hence, I'm delighted to have on stage researchers, practitioners, and policymakers who will showcase to us the projects and policy initiatives and programs that are currently delivering on the global transition to sustainable food future. But before that, I would like to remind everyone that we have interpretation available in French and English. We have with us this afternoon to present their innovative projects and initiatives, Roger Schultz. Professor Dr. Roger chairs the Farming Systems Ecology Group of Wageningen University, and I think I just butchered the word, which focuses on the design of farming systems and foodscapes that are ready for the sustainability challenges of 2050. Roger has 25 years' experience on the interface of science, practice, and policy making on agriculture sustainability in Ireland, Europe, and internationally. Welcome, Roger. Please welcome to the stage. Next we have Mr. Nicolas Tinois. Is working in the bioeconomy department of the project management, Gülech, a funding agency commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Education and Research. After coordinating a European research area network on sustainable agriculture for food and non-food systems, he was sent for an 18-month mission to the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture until end of last month. There he took the chairmanship, together with co-chairs from Denmark and Spain, of the newly created strategic working group on agroecology under the Standing Committee on Agriculture and Research. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Nicolas Tinois. Next, we have Mr. Omar Amawi, is Senior Manager and expert in the fields of scientific projects management and building strategic partnerships, with more than 15 years of experience in the fields of science, technology, and innovation, policies development, planning, implementation, and support, international cooperation, and building strategic networks and partnerships, commercialization. Omar is currently the Deputy Director of Prima Foundation and has represented Jordan in the General Assembly and contributed actively to drafting of the strategic research and innovation agenda of the program. Please welcome to the stage. Pleasure to have you all today. So to start off the discussion today and for the first round of questions, let us start with round of presentations, because we want to understand more on what is happening on ground and how can we break the the challenges of lost in translation, as the first panel rightfully so put it. Some say the European Green Deal and Farm to Fork strategy are mission impossible. And for us, we would not like the impossible part. Our next speaker, Roger Schultz, will show that actually nothing is impossible with RNI. So in addition to chairing as professor of Farming Systems Ecology Group in Wageningen University, again, oh my God, he is the director of the global network of Lighthouse Farms. I dare to say that he is a real ambassador crossing the borders between science and practice. In his role, he works closely with farmers that have decided to put sustainability at the heart of their production systems. Mr. Roger, can you present to us the global network of Lighthouse Farms and showcase some examples of such innovative farms from around the world? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miriam. I like that challenge. Mission impossible. Can we have the, yeah, there we go, presentation. I think it's clear from the first panel of speakers that actually the first part we already agree on. We already agree on what needs to be done. And we already agree on where we'd like to end up. What we all want the same. A prosperous, productive agricultural sector across the globe that at the same time doesn't eat into the resources of our planet, but stays within planetary boundaries. The challenge, that mission impossible, is how to get there. And that is where we are debating, where we are discussing, where we are searching. I work for Wageningen University and Research, which you pronounced very well.
Thank you.
And we've devoted the entire university to finding those answers, from soil scientists to social scientists, to make tools, to make models, to make visions of the futures we want. But what if amongst the 1 billion farmers around the world, there are those who have already found solutions, who have already reinvented themselves, redesigned themselves, and found a new way of farming that is ready for the challenges of 2050. Now, we've traveled around the world and we've brought those farmers together in what we call the global network of Lighthouse Farms. And we call them Lighthouse Farmers because they are like beacons on the horizons, illuminating pathways for others to follow. Let me introduce you briefly to 4 of these to show their diversity. We'll start close to home, in the Netherlands. Here, very close to Amsterdam, a company called Earth practices what we call strip cropping, where they grow their crops in strips rather than in monoculture blocks. Same crops, same total area on the farm, different spatial configuration. Why would we do that? Well, think of it, if a disease or a pest enters a field, a big monoculture field, it can spread in 4 directions. You get a quadratic increase of the disease. If it lands in a strip, it can only spread in 1 dimension. And you get a linear increase of the disease. And that difference, that can amount to a few weeks of difference that make the difference between a profit and a loss for example, a potato farmer. And thanks to our European projects, such as Diver Impacts, this is now not only theory, but also we've been able to support that with the data. From arable to livestock. Let's move to Ireland. Here we work with a company called Devonish Nutrition on producing sustainable beef, creating sustainable beef production systems, indeed, from soil to society. Now, beef has found itself in the spotlight for its impact on greenhouse gas emissions, but also on human health. But together, we're trying to turn this debate on its head. Can we design beef production systems that contribute positively to human health and positively to the environment? And with funding from the Industrial Training Network, we have 5 PhD candidates that are trying to design this. And I'm delighted that we have one of them here with us, Jane Shackleton, in the audience, together with Connie, the program manager. We don't just work with European farms. We're the global network. So here in this example from Brazil, where we work with Sao Paulo University and Rhizoma Agro, where we're recreating the Atlantic rainforest, 80% of which is lost. But this time we're recreating it not with natural species, but with food crops, with the same structure, the same ecological processes, the same ecosystem services. And finally, I'd like to emphasize we're not just working with farming systems, we're working with farmers. If we want a future for sustainable farming systems, then we need to think about our future farmers. And here we work with our Lighthouse Farm in Spain, La Junquera, that focuses on the regeneration of land that is being desertified, but also the rejuvenation of the farming community. And here we work with the Regeneration Academy that is training the farmers of tomorrow, but also the policymakers of tomorrow, the food industry of tomorrow, and all the actors that we need, as we heard in the previous panel, to work together on these better futures. These are just 4 examples out of many. And it is obvious that we're not looking for one solution. We're looking for a diversity of solutions for different climates, different contexts, different diets, different cultures, different commodities. And together, the Lighthouse Farms show this diversity of solutions, that it can be done, that they have turned mission impossible into mission achieved. With a different focus, each of them with their own approach to sustainability. Regenerative, climate smart, organic, non-organic, nutrition sensitive, a diversity of skills, from very large scale farms that produce food for a lot of people to smallholder communities in Indonesia and Ethiopia. And diversity of gender. Some are female-led, some are male-led, some are led by both. Finally, each of the farms has created its network itself, because these farmers have figured out that they too couldn't have made that transition by themselves, on their own. They needed all the partners they could find. Together, we're bringing all these people together, and we have a chance of creating that future we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This was very insightful because it shows how globally we can work together, and I believe this is the aim of this conference, and this is the aim of the strategy, because as the kind lady in the audience did mention, that there are resources. It's just that we are not distributing them wisely or equally. I will have follow-up questions after we have all the presentations, and I would like you to join us here on the panel. Thank you very much. Now we would like to go to our next speaker, Mr. Tinwa. You are the chair of the SCAR Agroecology, which stands for Standing Committee on Agriculture Research, Strategic Working Group on Agroecology. You are also putting a lot of efforts into preparing an research and innovation partnership under Horizon Europe on accelerating farming systems transition, agroecology living labs, and research infrastructures. This is one of the key R&I initiatives outlined in the Farm to Fork strategy. We are now very much looking forward to hearing your presentation on living laboratories that in fact has been inspired by the Canadians. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farag, and thank you to the organizer for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present you this upcoming partnership. This is a partnership which has not started yet. We are in the course of developing it and preparing the research priorities and how all this will work, because we have heard about the complexity of the challenges we are facing, and we need some good preparation in order to tackle these challenges. And so this partnership is aiming at accelerating the transition towards sustainable farming practices. I am one of the co-chairs, together with Denmark and Spain, of this SCAR Strategic Working Group on Agroecology. SCAR is a forum, let's say, of member states, associated countries, agreeing on research policy issues about agriculture, and to discuss with the Commission. And so this is the idea behind this strategic working group, is to try to pull the member states together to fund this future partnership. So partnerships, you might have heard in the past about ERANETs or EJPs. In nowadays Horizon Europe, we have heard the Commission this morning mentioning this keyword of Horizon Europe. There will be larger partnerships, and in particular the one we are speaking about. Here you have a list of partnerships in the Cluster 6, which was also mentioned this earlier afternoon on food bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture and environment. So that's the Cluster 6 part of Horizon Europe. And you can see there are topics of digitalization, animals, biodiversity, blue economy, for examples. So why a partnership on agroecology? Well, actually, you can see here some policy priorities, targets, and this partnership is clearly dealing with the Green Deal priorities, in particular those from the Farm to Fork strategy, but also from the biodiversity strategy. Those two aspects are definitely linked, we must say. We are also referring to the Common Agricultural Policy, so there are some aspects we consider in there, and the Organic Action Plan, for example. This is a particular added value of this specific partnership compared to other. It is addressing a lot of policy priorities. You can see here, I mentioned you already what is this SCAR Strategic Working Group. I just have a map of the membership, and you can see here we have observers, and we are also very much working with those key advisors. You can see on the top left, that's 3 EU-funded projects and the Joint Programming Initiative, FATSA, JPI, and Agriculture, Food Security, and Climate Change. I'm not going to go in detail on that slide because it's a little bit complicated. Just telling you on the left, you have the so-called 5 levels of agroecology transition, and the idea is to reach as high as possible in this scale, let's say, because a full transition to agroecology means coming at the top there. We are focusing more on the primary production aspect, but we cannot ignore the entire value chain. If we have products from the agroecology, we want them also to be accepted by the consumer and to be also affordable, let's say. We have decided not to make a new definition of agroecology. We heard earlier the Swiss colleague speaking about agroecology, a thing of hippie. So we decided not to make a new definition, but we have agreed on these common guidelines. I will not mention all of them. You will have the slides anyway afterwards. But these are common guidelines we are adhering to in order to work further in our partnership. We have developed in particular, so that's more important for us, an intervention logic with a very long-term vision for 2050. So teaming up and unlocking the transition to agroecology with more midterm, so long-term objectives here, that's the general objectives, and the specific objectives are midterm objectives. So it's a path, let's say, towards our vision. We must say we have plenty of initiatives around there we want to work with. We will hear later on about the mission soil. It's one of the aspects of the initiatives we want to work with, because they also are going to have living labs. So the living labs, so on the top left you have here the key elements coming from the European network of living labs. There is an active user involvement. It's a multi-stakeholder and multi-method approach. It's a real-life setting environment also, and it's about co-creation. Agroecology living labs have some unique, let's say, features in terms of a very strong local embeddedness, the large diversity of origins, and heterogeneity and intensity of knowledge and innovations which are needed. Research infrastructures can play a role also. I don't have added them here, but they can be complementary to the living labs, and both together they could be efficient instrument in order to accelerate the agroecology transition. I'm not going in depth on that slide. We have some research and innovation opportunities, but it's still provisional list here. We are developing right now the research agenda, strategic research and innovation agenda. I want to mention in particular at the bottom the systemic approaches. We heard about it earlier today. We need business models for agroecology, and we need also to raise the demand for products from agroecology. Here you have some potential research and innovation topics. Again, I'm not going in depth. You can see there are some things about digitalization, some about recovery of soil functions. We heard about carbon farming a little bit earlier. So all this I heard just before, it fits all in our partnership. I think it's very promising what I all heard. And how do we want to implement that? There are examples here. One main I would like to mention is this European network of living labs and research infrastructure. We want to have such a European network of such agroecology structures, living labs and research infrastructure, which can exchange on the best practices on how to work. Of course, we need to take into account the diversity of local conditions, cultural, etc., etc. But there will be some commonalities among them. And also, at the bottom, international cooperation will be crucial for us. So the FAO, we heard about it today, and Canada, you mentioned it, FNSSA. This will be all infrastructures we want to work with. This is my last slide, just showing you where we are. We are in the development of the strategic research and innovation agenda. There will be a wide consultation in order to develop this 3-year. And normally the partnership starts end of next year, beginning of 2024 for 7 years. So it's a long-term initiative with an ambitious budget, and I think it is good that we have now long-term projects to improve the agricultural systems. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm here for your questions.
Thank you very much. The key word that I keep hearing is partnership, and I believe that Goal 17 is really taking center stage on this panel. In fact, I believe for the entire farm to fork, without partnership, we cannot really create the impact that we want to see. And speaking about from Europe to the Middle East and information transformation and benchmarking, I would like to welcome Mr. Amawi. You are the Deputy Director of the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean area. It is the most ambitious joint program supported by the EU through Horizon RNI program, undertaken in the frame of Euro-Mediterranean cooperation. It brings together 19 countries. I will not mention all of them, but some of them are non-EU member states: Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Tunisia. I mean, the list is long, and it's quite ambitious, to jointly tackle common issues in relation to sustainable agriculture and food systems through RNI. I'm eager to learn about this successful partnership and how can we actually have it as a pilot successful model for others to implement. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Actually, you covered like half of my presentation, so you made my life easier. Well, so glad to be here in Dubai within this Expo activities under the organization of the European Union, a conference that is fitting perfectly in the goals of this Expo, bringing minds together. And bringing minds together is almost the same as partnership, like you just mentioned. I'm just waiting for my presentation to be loaded. Oh.
The green button.
Oh, here we go.
There we go.
So when we are talking partnership, I mean, there are several partnerships, but when we are talking Prima partnership, it's a kind of unique and different partnership. That's why, that's what I'm going to tell you in the next few slides here. First, as Mariam just mentioned, it's a partnership in the Euro-Mediterranean area. 19 countries are partners within this partnership, 11 from the European Union, and 8 are non-EU countries. Of course, to make a partnership, a true partnership, it has to be on equal footing basis. And when we are talking about equal footing basis, meaning that all partners have the same chance to either make decisions, to contribute with funding, or to decide on the activities, and even to manage this partnership. And this is what is being demonstrated perfectly within the Prima program. Participating states have contributed about 274 million euros towards the overall budget of the program. And then the European Union put on top of that 220 million euros. That's not including, of course, the participating states from the European Union in the program. So that's in the co-funding aspect. Well, to make this partnership also effective, we have to work on a common basis. We have to address or to tackle common challenges. And when you are talking about 19 countries with different geography and different cultures, different many things, it's really not an easy task to find some joint activities or some joint challenges, or let's say some common priorities between those countries in order to work together on for like a medium-term commitment, which is a 10-year program with 7 years of goals. That's why during the implementation and negotiation phase of the program, which was between 2012 and 2017 when we officially launched the program, we went through a lot of discussions, a lot of negotiation, a lot of agreement and disagreement. The discussions in panel one this afternoon were kind of a sample of what we have been through until we have reached this final agreement of the program. And then we have decided on the strategic research and innovation agenda. That is our reference for the 7 years of the launch of the program, of the goals of the program. The thematic areas that have been identified as common areas to work on were, as you see on this slide, management of water farming systems and agro-food value chain. But of course, in order to have more impact and to capitalize or to enhance the maximize the benefit of our resources, the nexus between those themes is, of course, a more important approach. That's why we are adopting the WIFI, or water, energy, food, ecosystems nexus approach within our projects, even within the thematic areas themselves, and we have introduced that efficiently and effectively in our calls. Of course, we have talked about the challenges, and I'm sure that you are all aware, or you know one way or another, about the challenges that we are facing either in the Mediterranean area or even globally. So here is a list of some challenges that we have identified and we agreed on. When I say we, the entire participating countries in the program, the General Assembly, which became afterwards the Board of Trustees, and now we have the Secretariat that is managing the program. Climate change, population growth, water scarcity, agrobiodiversity loss. So all of these problems are there. Unfortunately, in some cases, the severity of these problems was increasing. So it's wise to work together and to put all available resources together in order to try at least to minimize the way these problems and challenges are going. So to tackle these challenges, I think those are some three or the three objectives that we are working on. But under these three objectives, or under these three goals, there are several other objectives or results that are expected. For example, alignment of national R&I programs to reduce fragmentation, to work on or to jointly identify the priorities. Many countries have adjusted and changed their national regulations for funding research and innovation just in order to fit into the regulations of the other countries in order to expedite the process and to simplify the funding process for the selected projects for funding. Critical mass of actors also, this is something very crucial and has been mentioned several times, and it will be mentioned, and you will be hearing this several times throughout your career if you decide to continue in this community. So this is very important. And strengthening our capacities, of course, with this international dimension of working together makes available so many resources for researchers. On top of that, also funding is very important. Well, in PRIMA, we fund mainly two types of actions. The two main ones, research and innovation actions, and I'm sure that you are familiar with that, and innovation action. Research and innovation leading to some kind of a technology or some kind of a knowledge, and the innovation action that has taken a technology into a higher level, or taken innovation into a higher level with the specified TRLs here. So I will not go through those in detail, but just to give you a flavor about the types of action that we are funding in the PRIMA program, which is, by the way, a very competitive program, and the success rate, unfortunately, is very low, but at least we are trying to provide some opportunities better than nothing. Going through the thematic areas very quickly also, you see the research and innovation priorities that we are addressing, and more clearly they are going in the direction of sustainability and integrated management of resources, either in water management or in farming system or in the agro-food value chain. So I know that I have a limited time here, but I will go to the last slide very quickly here. And just to give you a flavor of what has been achieved so far under the PRIMA program, our first annual work program was launched in 2018, and we have just recently, like a month ago, launched our 5th annual work program. So 4 have been concluded successfully, and 1 still in the pipeline. So the opportunity is there for anybody who's interested to apply for this call. But from the previous 4 calls, we have been able to identify and fund 168 projects with a budget of 225 million euros, around 1,600 beneficiaries, with a success rate 7.7%. This is a global success rate. Unfortunately, it's different between the two sections that we are funding in PRIMA. But this is good to know, but what's also important to highlight that although we are talking about only 168 projects being funded, but more than 1,600 projects were rejected. And many of them, I would say majority of them, were rejected not because they are not good, but because of lack of funding and the limited resources that we are having in the program. Almost 1,600 beneficiaries, and here we're talking, I'm trying to highlight the importance of networking. 1,600 beneficiaries now currently are working together, but on the other side, more than 18,000 beneficiaries applied within those 1,600 projects and tried together to put some kind of proposal to address a challenge in the Mediterranean. Okay, so you can imagine the amount or the impact that if these 18,000 beneficiaries at least, or if partially worked together, what will be the impact on other or on the challenges that we are trying either through PRIMA or through other programs in the Mediterranean. That's it. This is what I wanted today, or what I'm allowed to say within this time frame. I would like to highlight here that we have a very user-friendly website, and I have the address here. Also, you may follow us on the social media for updates and information about the calls, about the program, and about the activities that we are taking over under the PRIMA program. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Mr. Amawi, actually, sorry to catch you off guard before I open the Q&A for our audience, because we really need to hear from them and then engage. You mentioned 7.7% success rate, and personally, I would like to understand why. Is this a high number? Is this a low number? And can you enlighten us on why is it, if it's a low number, why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, actually, it's an okay number. Okay, we always aim to make it higher. In section 1, it's about 3%, unfortunately, and in section 2, it's about 14%. So when you go average, considering the number of projects funded under each section, we ended up with a 7.6%. Why is it low or okay? Because we are receiving a very, very, very large number of applications every year. So let's say in the first call, we have received about 460 applications, and we were able to fund only 9 projects.
Wow.
Due to the limited budget. Of course, at the beginning, we have distributed the funds available, and we have decided a maximum budget for a project, which was about 1 million or 1.5 million. But again, we have to make a balance. Well, we have decided that budget, which is relatively low, because we wanted to fund more projects. But at the end, if you want impact, you need to have larger budgets for the projects. That's why we increased the budget per project, but that decreased the success rate of the program.
Absolutely, thank you. This actually takes me to another question, and I would like to address this question to Roger, but obviously to any of our distinguished speakers present here today. Funding seems to be the challenge when we're talking about from the first panel to the second one, and maybe perhaps even the third one. Funding is always the challenge. And there is a big debate, not just in Europe, but I want to understand more from a European perspective. There is a big debate when it comes to sustainability, environmentally friendly actions, and profitability. How can we measure environmental measurements versus profitability versus cost? Roger, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's indeed a hot debate in Europe at the moment, and I've seen reports that indeed if you try and change one element of your farming system, then often it is in conflict with profitability if you take one measure. But if we redesign the farming systems and do not one thing differently, but many different things differently, then it can work. And Miriam, would you allow me to bring one example into the discussion here? Because we're fortunate that we have Jane here with us. Now, Jane is a third-generation female farmer stepping into her mother's and her grandmother's footsteps, but she's also a PhD candidate at our Heartland project, our Irish Lighthouse Farm, where they don't change one thing, they don't just reduce fertilizer input, but they change the system. Jane, could you elaborate for us on that?
Welcome, Jane. And it's inspiring to see female farmers in third generation. This is amazing.
Yeah,
please
quite
go
unusual.
ahead.
Thanks for the introduction, Rohir. Yeah, I suppose a bit of my background. I'm from a place called Cavan in Ireland, and I'm an organic beef farmer alongside my mother. We've been certified for organic for nearly 30 years now. And I suppose 5 years ago I went home to farm and was exposed to the challenges that is facing farming in Ireland. We're very much a ruminant-based system, grass-based, but like every sector, facing huge challenges. So I was lucky enough to get the opportunity for a PhD on the Irish Lighthouse Farm, which is the Devonish lands at Douth. And Horizon 2020 funding came through in our project, which is called the Heartland Project. And my PhD work revolves around interventions such as increasing species diversity in grassland. In Ireland, we've been very much advised to go to high-yielding monoculture grasses, and obviously there's knock-on effects on the environment and profitability as well. As a farmer, I'm acutely aware of profitability, and that we're trying to put science and publishable data behind finding more sustainable and innovative grazing systems. So we have 5 PhD students covering all right from soil right through to society, to the meat that we're producing off these different sward types, and how that will affect human health, and also how that will affect farmers, the implications on their profitability as well. So those are 2 years into the project now, and we've seen really great results in terms of reduction in fertilizer. So we've reduced that back by 60%. We've seen increased animal performance, impacts on animal welfare, and obviously on the soil health side of things as well. So yeah, I suppose that's a quick overview of what we're doing on our project.
It's very interesting. I originally come from Egypt, and I know for a fact that sustainability and environmentally friendly agriculture is very high in cost when it comes to a farmer, a local farmer in Egypt. And these are the huge challenges. And Mr. Amawi, you did mention that one of the challenges that you try to combat with an opportunity or a solution is the mass action when it comes to stakeholder or stakeholder engagement, when it comes to public and private sector as well with partnership. And I would like to have a follow-up question for any of our speakers. Mr. Tinwai, you spoke a lot about partnership as well. How can we create mass partnership? How can we get the public to partner with the private sector to raise more funds, to actually provide local farmers to take necessary sustainable measures to align with the strategy like the European strategy or the Mediterranean and so on?
Yes, thank you for your question. So there are several aspects. In our partnership in particular, we are thinking about how to raise the amount of money which is expected to be raised to tackle such a large challenge. And in this regard, so it's not, when we are saying that there are funds missing, yeah, the private sector can play a role, but it's also about, there are some investitions which are possible, but which we don't know about. So we are speaking about research aspects, but we are also speaking about innovation. If we want to accelerate a transition, we need to accelerate the transfer of the sustainable practices, of sustainable farming practices into the field. And so there may be some possibilities. So we are speaking about this in the Common Agricultural Policy, so to use these funds, to use the regions have a role to play there. How to involve the private sector, it's always a tricky part, of course, but the point is to have them have a say in the preparation and right from the beginning. Actually, you cannot just come at the end and tell them, no, it's like that, and please co-finance with us. They need to be involved.
There has to be ownership from the beginning.
There has to be ownership, and not only from the private sector, but also we heard about socio-economic sciences and humanities. You need to take into account the social barriers, the economic barriers, but while not forgetting the environmental, we heard about it. So there are some trade-offs to be paid attention to. You need to take all the actors, all the relevant actors from the beginning on board.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and we have to transition to panel 3, but our panelists and speakers will be available for follow-up questions. Thank you very much to our panelists. It's really, really interesting. And I move to the next speakers. So we welcome our speakers of the third panel of this conference on the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy, live from the French Pavilion at Expo 2020. It is with great pleasure that I welcome the 3 inspiring panelists of this conference. Much like the previous panel, the speakers will showcase their innovative R&I projects and policy initiatives worldwide that are acting now to support the transition towards sustainable food systems from farm to fork. I would start with Mrs. Teresa Pinto Correa, is a geographer, full professor at the University of Évora, Portugal. She coordinates a research team on the processes of change in European rural landscapes at multiple scales, dealing with land use systems, their management, as well as tensions and synergies in the transitions between production, consumption, and protection of the countryside. She has a record of more than 120 peer-reviewed publications and multiple international projects. Welcome. Our next speaker is Mrs. Irene Anor Frembon. welcome, is a research for development practitioner with over 30 years of rich experience in international research for development practice and territory education. She is the coordinator of H2020 LEAP 4 FNSSA, if I got that correctly, project, and until August 2020 was the Director of Research and Innovation at the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa. Welcome. Next we have Dr. Abdu Tenkuwano. I believe, I hope I pronounced that correctly, sir. Is the Executive Director of CORAF, the West and Central Africa Council for Agriculture Research and Development, an international not-for-profit association of national agriculture research and development institutions from 23 countries with headquarters based in Dakar, Senegal. He also is a guest lecturer at the University of, oh boy, that's going to be very, very challenging. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Great. Welcome. I would like to start with Mrs. Correa. The EU missions are a novelty of the Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program for the years 2021-2027. In brief, EU missions are a new way to bring concrete solutions to some of our greatest challenges. They will deliver impact by putting research and innovation into a new role, combined with new forms of governance and collaboration, as well as engaging citizens. That's very, very interesting because it really sums up well with the first panel as well. How can we engage citizens? Mrs. Pinto, you are a member of the mission board for Soil Deal for Europe that aims to create 100 living labs and lighthouses to lead the transition towards healthy soils. We are all keen to learn about this initiative from you. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone, so I'm going to present the soil mission of the 5 missions of the Horizon Europe. And it's exactly as you say, the goal is to change the paradigm of managing our soils by engaging people and engaging all types of people in this change. So the goal of the mission is this one, is that we will have 100 living labs to lead the transition. So the goal is this will be the way, the pathway to have a change in the condition of our soils. And why do we need a mission on soil health? We've talked a lot about living labs. We have talked a lot about making our food systems more sustainable, but the ground for it is, with no doubt, the soil. So we need to change in many different ways, but we need to have better soils. They are the basis for our food system. They deliver these vital ecosystem services, but they are scarce. They are a non-renewable resource, or they take too long to be renewed. And they are threatened, and we are still facing, I just visited last week an olive farm in Portugal owned by a very big company who has around 20,000 hectares of olive production, intensive olive production, and we have a younger researcher doing research there, and this year with very little rain, because it's a very dry year, we had about 20 tons of erosion, soil erosion per hectare. So it's enormous, it's still ongoing, there are many problems which still go on, and we cannot halt it just by continuing not doing something. We need to do something. So the soil mission or the soil deal, it's very much in tune with the Green Deal objectives. There's also a new soil strategy of EU. So there's a lot of alignment, and also about what was said here about the agroecology partnership, about what you are doing. We have been talking about these living labs, but the idea is very much that we need to have a change to halt things which we know are wrong, but are still ongoing, and to recuperate those who are degraded already. So there's a set of objectives which were set in the mission. So the mission board was working for almost 2 years to produce the objectives which were really the most important ones in transferring or transforming our soil. and they are here. But what I would like to say is that, and it was said already before, that if you want to change soil conditions, we need to act with people. So we need to change people behavior, the way people manage their soils. So it's very much focused, due to that, it's very much focused on having a program which has these 4 pillars, and there's a research and innovation program where research questions will be addressed, but it links to people and to a territorial basis in the living labs and lighthouses. But we are mainly focusing on living labs because that's where research is going to take place, driven by questions which are real-world questions. So the research should not stay in the labs, they should go out, or in the labs, in the research centers, it should go out to these living labs and these territorial places, and then it should be followed by a system of monitoring, which is not there. It's there in some countries, but it's not a general one. So we need to have data about how soils are progressing and where the problems are bigger and where actions are really solving problems or getting it better. And then a strong pillar on communication, on citizen engagement, on getting people to know about soils. Soils is really the hidden resource in our knowledge system. Everybody talk about climate. In southern countries, we talk a lot about water, but on soil nobody talks. And I will advise all of you to take a look at the exhibition in the Terra Pavilion, which has a wonderful exhibition. You go into the soil in a forest ecosystem, and it's really enriching for young people to know how lively it is under our soils. So this soil literacy is very important, specific for this topic, because there's so little knowledge about this topic. So what are living labs in the understanding of the soil mission? It's very close to what is the agroecology living labs. They are real-life place experiments. So it's not one place, it's not one farm, it's a cluster of farms who work together so they can share the innovation, they can share the exchanges, and they share it with researchers. So there's a lot of, we have to co-develop, so we identify needs and outcomes, study how we do it, then test the solutions, and then when we evaluate if it works or not, they will be expanded. So the idea is that there is a virtuous circle. And the question is also that working with multiple partners in one specific territory, there will be also the chance to spread the novelty through the lighthouses, but also just by networking in one territory. So the idea is that living labs are really clusters which are anchored in a territory where the change and the positive results of the change will be spread in this territory and then further apart. So the network of living labs is to be gradually established, and I think here it's very important, it's not written in my slide, but very important that we think about the matching with these other initiatives. So there are living labs already in place, there are living labs paid by projects or paid by regional authorities or by others. They should really come together, so there's co-financing, co-funding of these living labs, so they have a chance to continue in the future and not be depending on the financing which will come from Horizon Europe. So there will be specific criteria defined for what is a living lab, and the engagement with the regional, national stakeholders is very important. And then the idea is to cover different types of land use systems, different types of contexts, of regional contexts, so that really Europe will be covered by these living labs. So the key words are integration of different sciences and different stakeholders, contextualization, so that we define solutions which are fit for the region where they are, system thinking, and equity. So we think about all the factors of the system, connecting, for instance, social sciences with the other ones as seen. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much. In my slide, there will be also, in my slides, the funding opportunities for research and some useful links, so you can look at them if you need or if you are curious. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pinto. If you don't mind, I'll add one more to your slide and points, is that communication and storytelling and media for impact is key for us to all understand all of these terminologies. How can we be actually responsible citizens? As a storyteller myself, I would love to tell that story, but to simplify it to the average citizen or the local person. Now we turn to Mrs. Anor Frempong, who is the Director for Research and Innovation at the Forum for Agriculture Research in Africa, and actively involved in the Partnership on Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture EU-Africa FASA, FINSA. The partnership addressed the challenges set out in UN Sustainable Development Goal 2, End Hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture by stimulating joint AU-EU research and innovation activities. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of us. I'm pleased to be given this opportunity to talk about the partnership between Africa and Europe. We've had a lot that's happening on the ground. We've had a lot of issues, and we're talking about systems. We're talking about food systems. We're talking about research systems. We're talking about innovation systems. And I often say that as soon as you start talking about systems, the way to fix it is looking at the systemic issues. Mm-hmm. Because once you don't fix the systemic issues, it's unlikely that you'll be able to deal fixing the system. So the long-term Europe-Africa Partnership for Food, Nutrition and Sustainable Agriculture, FNSSA, so the title is LEAP for FNSSA, it's been put up as a decisive action by the European Union and the African Union. Because after decades of, what have I done now? Can we go back to my, do I press the red to go back?
The red button, yes, to go back to the previous slide.
Oh, okay.
I can also assist.
Okay, but how do I advance the slides?
The green button.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. And it jumps to the next presentation.
Oh, really? Can we have
There's
someone from...
There's a systemic problem here.
There's a systemic...
Okay, but let me continue as we fix that. I'm trying... The first thing I wanted to do is to put the Leap for FNSSA in context. Why it was important. In fact, for the past couple of decades, Europe has had several engagements with the African Union. In fact, many of the projects we are discussing actually traverse different subject areas and disciplines between Africa and Europe. So the cooperation between Africa and Europe is a very long-standing one, and funding lots and lots of projects involving almost all African countries and many European countries. However, over time, the impact of these projects have not been the best, and I think we've heard from most of us. And the reason that's the case is what has led to this project, the systemic issues around coordination, around ensuring that there is some level of coherence in what we do, ensuring that there is efficiency in putting the project together and deriving priorities that are common to the both continents. So at the 2014 summit, the Joint Africa-Europe summit agreed that they were going to have a strategy to deal with this. And in 2018, they took that action to come up with this project, Leap for FNSSA, primarily to deal, can I go forward now? No, soft.
Is the presentation sorted? Yes, no? Luckily, it's your project, so you know about it.
Yeah. But then
is there anything I can do from stage?
Way. No. Otherwise, I'll have to bring my laptop myself to speak to it, because I thought I'll have it here. My laptop is right there.
If I can do something from over here, or maybe I can try to see what is the matter with if you allow me. Okay, so that's the beginning.
The slides are not really.
Mm-hmm. Now we go to the, I see. All right.
This one is not really nice.
Now we skip to a whole new slide. If we can have technical assistance, please. And we're running late for the next presentation as well.
This presentation is also not easy.
All right, so until we fix the technicality,
Let me just grab my laptop, I think.
I would like to use this time. Yes, would you like me to get the laptop for you? I think it's back. It's there. There we go. Thank you very much.
So I've talked about all this. I wanted to establish the context, then to look at what we are envisaging to solve this problem, because we think this is a game changer. But that's why the title is so. And then look at what we have done to date that makes us confident that we're able to do this, and maybe the next steps. So I was touching on the systemic issues that have arisen because there is duplication of efforts, fragmentation, weak synergies, and generally lack of coherence among actors across board, and the short-term funding cycles that we have had over the years, which is very difficult to sustain a long-term effort. That these together undermine the efficiency of what we're doing, returns on investments, and also the general impact that we're getting. These are the systemic issues. It's difficult, but it's not unsurmountable. So that's what the African Union and the European Union, under the GIS, decided to give the mandate to this project to look into how it will be able to solve this problem. And this project is implemented by 35 institutions across Africa and Europe, 20 in Europe and 15 in Africa. And so the mandate of trying to establish a structure or a platform for efficient and coherent implementation of the EU-AU Research and Innovation Partnership, and at the heart of it is to help implement the Food Nutrition Security for Sustainable Agriculture Program, that's the FNSSA partnership. We're talking of a huge partnership for over 300 projects that come together to help us articulate what this platform that we're talking about. And so four objectives were set to be able to do this, to increase synergies, develop learning environment about knowledge, because knowledge is at the center of this. I had a soundbite from the previous meeting. It says, knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. If you don't share knowledge, then you don't find more solutions. How do you get the innovative ideas and co-create innovations about knowledge? And establishing a long-term sustainable governance and funding mechanism as the centerpiece of this. The governance is important, that needs to be participated within by all the actors, but the funding mechanism, we talked about redirecting funding flows. We talked about the COSI work of finding nearly 15 billion in arrears, I say it. How do we redirect some funding to ensure that we're tackling some of these systemic issues, but also how do we link up with the policy process? The science-policy interface has always been very weak. And so we crisscross in the project. It's organized around 5 work packages, but they crisscross working with each other to deal with these 4 objectives. Time is not on our side, so I'm just jumping to show you the envisaged platform, how we envisage it to look like. The model is being modeled as the International Research Consortium with key functions, 4 functions. The first function, which is at the center, is providing a knowledge system and information and communication agenda that really aims to generate but also disseminate knowledge and underpin a learning environment, because that's really what we know. A lot is going on, but there is no effort or there is no database that tells us who is doing what, where, with whom, and how you can actually engage. This project is actually doing that. There is a huge database that's taking on board all the FNSSA, put over 300 of them You go into that database and you will find your way. You will navigate all the projects, who is funding, what's going on, and all that. For you to now know you don't have to duplicate and you know who to engage with. The other piece of it is to ensure that you have the stakeholder dialogues and stakeholder communities, because when we say a platform, we are not saying it's inclusive, but it doesn't mean everything is going to be in one big platform. The platform is to link up with other clusters. We talked about connectedness and interconnectedness. We're putting in systems that this platform will be able to connect to existing clusters, existing networks, existing structures, but also map itself into existing partnerships. Because I can bet there are lots of partnerships that are trying. We just heard from Prima. This is a great one that you need to build on, you need to link up with. So this second bit is also a great bit. Then the third bit is more about the funding mechanism. How do you get a sustainable long-term funding to drive this agenda? And of course, ensuring that you are always linking back to the policy processes, both at the AU level and EU level, that actually translate down to member states. So this is what this envisaged platform is about, and underpinning that is the continuous learning and capacity building, because of course, if you want to assure equity across board, it must have this continuous learning and capacity development. This slide is to show the benefits that accrue members of the platform. We are foreseeing that if you're a member of the platform as an institution or initiative, it's ensuring your impact, is ensuring that you optimize the utilization of your results. It provides you with great access to knowledge, and a great knowledge base, and of course, learning environment, and the recognition and visibility and participation in the governance. You see, most of the time when people talk about trusts in partnerships, is being transparent and knowing what is going on, and also participating in how you're governed and how the coordination is about. So it's that participation that is crucial for us here. And the criteria for being on the platform or modeling the platform is that it's bicontinental. Operationally, it's provide the necessary information and interactions and connections, and it is inclusive. In fact, we've heard about inclusivity in one of the World Economic Forum, one of the, they call it future-proof system aspiration, is about inclusiveness. That you should make that an important aspiration. So this, the last or so slide, that's a summary of what we have done to date. We've talked about earlier projects that the AU and EU had worked on and where we have learned the lessons. Now, in this Live for FNSSA project, we have achieved great milestones. The first one is that we've established a link between projects and the policy processes, particularly with the high-level policy dialogue. We've also defined what partnership projects should be about, and we have the M&E framework to help us with the monitoring. Secondly, we also have another milestone around raising awareness and linking stakeholders. And the list of stakeholders are endless. The decision makers, researchers, funding institutions, agribusiness entities, women, youth, all that. Currently, we have about 130 plus institutions that have expressed interest to join this platform. And indeed, we also have established the database I talked about, over 300 of them, formidable management system tools. But last but not the least, we're talking about long-term. And so the fourth point in the corner there is that we are using a long-term cyclical programming process to ensure that as you move from one cycle of projects, you're able to move to the next cycle. And this cyclical process is actually moving and building community from bottom up. There's one from West Africa, another from North Africa, that's helping us to draft theories of change and impact pathways that we can use to articulate our progress, and also looking at coordination hub, how it should look like, and actually how we link up with other cluster networks. So if you pull all these deliverables, you see that the International Research Consortium formulation is one that is of great flexibility and one that is planned to grow. So it's, as I said, it starts with a nucleus, and as members begin to participate, it grows so that we can be more efficient.
I am really sorry, Mrs.
My last slide.
Anor, I can't. I'm really conscious of time, and we still have another speaker, and we have to wrap up very quickly. But we will be sharing, I'm sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was very insightful. And to our next, our last speaker, Mr. Ten Kuana. You are the last to present, so we're looking forward to it. And please, you have the stage. And needless to say that we're really conscious of time. Thank you very much, sir.
I know, and I'll try to go very quickly. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would like to stand on all protocols, but I do want to recognize some of the donors that have supported us through the years, including the Swiss cooperation that has come recently, but has decided to help us deal with one systemic issue, and I'll come to that very quickly. We are in a part of the world where we have multiple disruptors. I don't need to go through them. Armed conflicts are of recent development and concern for all of us. The fact is that they are all interconnected. There is one I have not mentioned here. It's a disruptor that is related to funding. The fact that it's not the amount of funding, it's the fact that we have different sources of funding that are not necessarily coordinated and are imposing priorities that sometimes may not align with what the needs on ground are. And that's why I want to recognize the Swiss cooperation for having come to say, let's put this together, let's handle that disruptor. So a number of institutions exist in Africa. On the right-hand side, we have the economic commissions, which we are a technical arm of for research and development. On the left-hand side are technical institutions that were set up in response to the crisis related to drought in the early 70s, and we work with all of them. CORAF was created in 1987 because of the recognition that all that existed did not address adequately the issues because they didn't take into account research and innovation. So we decided that the best way to operate was to take wisdom from what was happening. Borderless challenges, the pests and diseases do not know borders, they don't need visa to cross. No country had the full capacity, so it was important that we pull together resources from different countries so that we would have borderless solution. And our framework for collaboration was a continental framework for agricultural development in the continent. So we pulled our resources and we said, we can't do research on everything, everywhere. Let us focus on the most important commodities and let us determine which countries can take the regional leadership on a particular one. Let me not go into details here, but we call them centers of specialization, and that's where we are inviting international expertise. For example, in Senegal, we have the dry cereal one. We needed to develop techniques in molecular breeding, for example. We invited CIRAD, and CORAF paid for a position at CIRAD to come and help develop that expertise. That's one of the things that we do. We have now matched all the CG centers with our centers of specialization as we go into the next phase of development of our infrastructure, and we will have some resources to support that. And finally, we also have worked with universities of the Feed the Future system in the US to match them with all of our centers so that we can work together. The last thing that is unfolding is how to harness European expertise into this system. And I happen to be a visiting professor at KU11 in Belgium, and we have sought how to bring that partnership into being with funding from the EU. Harmonization of processes is heart of what we're doing. If you look at this map, at the bottom, the red means that we were not doing the right thing, and the green meant that we have improved. And that is in harmonizing seed systems, seed regulation, so that seeds can cross easily from one place to another. And we're happy that we're able to do that. Technologies have moved freely from one country to another, but more importantly, when Ebola came, it prevented farmers from going to the fields. And after the health crisis, we would have had a food crisis. Thanks to the system we put in place, we're able to load trucks of seeds from Nigeria coming across up to Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. That's a frame that we think we need to use collectively as we go forward. Let me not talk about the impacts under normal conditions. When we started, only about 10% of land was used with improved seeds. We got to 25%, but that means there is a gap of 75% that offers opportunities for us to work together. Now, COVID came, and COVID showed that even if you have money to import food, food wasn't moving. And we feel that it is opportune for us to revisit the economics of proximity in making our different villages as self-reliant as possible. And the way to do that is also to go back to our local foods. Millet is from West Africa. But when you look at the map, you see the number of processed food from millet. There are not many in Africa. It's mostly elsewhere. How do we get this back is a challenge that I think we need to collectively take up. We think that we can import technology, but not food. And if the technology that we import, we can maintain the diversity of our systems. It's under this framework that the EU came and said, okay, you have a catalog of varieties, but they are old. Can we do something to improve the system so that we have new varieties that are adapted to the climate and to the taste of the people? You will see that we have one project in that area. Let me not go into much detail, but we expect that within a few years we'll be able to rejuvenate our collection of new varieties thanks to the EU funding. And it is a partnership program. Then we learned that pests move across borders. And we put in place a system for mango, for example, that we export to Europe. There were a lot of catchments because they say there are flies, we don't want them in Europe. And when a consignment is seized, we have to pay for the destruction of it. And that's a double waste, a double loss. So we put in place a system collectively that would allow us to have some kind of monitoring and rapid intervention. And as a result of that, we have been able to increase production, reduce catchment, and the increased production is turning into dry mango technology, creating jobs for women. Just one more slide, and I will stop there. From that, we have learned that we need to be anticipatory, and thanks to the EU, another project came that helped us to develop a mechanism for molecular diagnostic and surveillance, this time targeting cassava, which is one very important crop. So in May of this year, we inaugurated that center thanks to this funding. And finally, coming together as partners, the different center organizations like IRENES and others who were asked by the EU to come together so that our partnership would be more effective. And I would like to say that we now speak with one voice. Well, still some little differences, but thanks to that voice, we were able to persuade the African Development Bank and the International Fund for Agricultural Development to convene a high-level meeting on how to scale innovation. And that took place in April of 2021. And we understand that there has been a pledge up to $17 billion to fund innovation, which is a good result. With this, Madam Moderator, let me skip and just say that we have been focusing so much on solving problems, but unless we build also the anticipation, then we would be always behind. I would like to stop with that and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, and it was very insightful. Thank you, Ms. Teresa. Thank you, Dr. Irene, and thank you, Dr. Abdu, for an insightful panel. I would like now to please invite Mr. Tassos Haniotis for a wrap-up and take-away messages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You put me the easy task today, squeezed between time and a commissioner, but my task has been helped a lot by the speakers, both the previous ones and this one. So let me go back where I stopped before. What was remaining for this particular panel is the two other aspects of leadership, which are actually the innovating and the relating aspects. And we had them clearly coming out in these two panels. First of all, because innovating is about the generation of knowledge, new knowledge that is done in a manner that requires a framework. And what you have seen here is both in the previous Horizon 2020 and the new Horizon Europe framework of the European Commission and the European Union, you see the role that research plays in the funding of research in being able to generate the new knowledge that is so necessary. Second, what we need for innovation is bottom-up approaches. The manner and the knowledge that is not generated only by these institutions that do have the capacity to do it, but also by actors that sometimes out of serendipity they might come up with something that really makes a difference. And finally, what is required is a very clear problem-solving approach. I'm not going to mention anything else here but the word soil, because soil is so central in what we're doing, especially in the area of agriculture and all its links with economic, environmental, and social aspects, that if you do good things for the soil, you automatically do things for water, for emissions, and for biodiversity. And that's why it has been so central in setting up the new mission. The second thing that is important, and that goes to the relating aspect, is the transfer of knowledge. And here, allow me to say, we hear so much a lot about these aspirational targets that play their role in terms of the overall direction or orientation, but it's important to have also inspirational targets. And this comes from concrete experiences on the ground that people can share with. If I go to a farmer and with my suit and tell them you have to do like that, and will say, show me your hands. Thank you very much. If a farmer sees that a farmer next to him or her with similar type of problems, similar soil conditions, similar experiences have come with a solution, they're going to come up and put it in place. But what they need is also advisory systems that are able to transfer this knowledge to those needing more. And this is the third aspect that came out clearly from this panel, which is that we're not the center of the universe in the European Union. The rest of the world matters, and Africa matters a lot. And I would like to thank the two last presenters, despite all the time squeeze that they had to face, for giving us a sense for the very different type of challenges that other parts of the world have to face, and also putting us, in the modesty to try to provide our help and advice in a manner that realizes that their starting point will come from them. And a final point is, we're talking about knowledge here. Knowledge has three requirements. First of all, the production of knowledge. Second, the transfer of knowledge. And third, and above all in my view, the best communication of knowledge, because we've seen that perceptions about science are not exactly what we would always like to have them. With that, I would like to leave you here. I thank all the speakers and the moderators for the excellent work they've done. Of course, the French Pavilion for actually hosting us, and the rest will come from my commissioner. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to all of our panelists. Now, we'd like to conclude the discussions today and welcome back the European Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development, His Excellency Janusz Wojciechowski, to deliver the final thoughts and messages to conclude the forum.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor for concluding remarks. I would like to express my gratitude to our panelists for having kindly accepted the invitation to join me today for this event. As we have seen throughout this conference, research and innovative solutions are key enablers for the transition towards sustainable food systems from farm to fork. For this transition, we need to have all food system actors involved and bilateral and multilateral cooperation strengthened. It is great to see that synergies between research institutions and project managers on the ground can be found. The breadth of topics covered today and the diversity of research and innovation initiatives are clearly a sign that innovation is high on the agenda and striving to provide solutions. What I retrieve from the conversation today is the following: the importance of having a framework for research and innovation, the relevance of the bottom-up approach to bring a variety of innovative solutions, and the exchange of information and lessons learned to spread these solutions along the value chains. Of course, the European Union is willing to pursue this dialogue and the cooperation with our partners and all stakeholders involved in bringing innovative solutions for our farmers and our food systems. Let me finally address my thanks to the team of the French Pavilion, to the moderators for guiding us through this discussion, and the interpreters. I wish you all a pleasant rest of the day at this wonderful expo site. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency Commissioner. Thank you for all of our attendees today. It was an absolute pleasure for myself and my fellow moderator, Ms. Mariam Faraj, to be hosting today. And we look forward we wish you all the very best in the days ahead. And of course, the big talker is the communication of these strategies. And for us as journalists, it's more of an eye-opener for based here in this part of the globe as well, to understand the importance of food security and how to promote such practices, because COVID really did raise alarm bells across the globe when it comes to the food supply chain as well. So thank you all, and we hope that it was a fruitful discussion, and we look forward to welcoming you back here at the French Pavilion at some point in the future. Thank you all. We do have a reception outside for some wonderful networking and also catching up and exchanging business cards.